What's
I'll
that?
just be here.
Oh,
All right.
You all
All set,
set?
John?
I'm gonna call the Bath Planning Commission meeting to order. It's March the 12th, and it's about 2 or 3 minutes after 6. Has everybody seen the agenda?
I have one addition to the agenda.
Go ahead.
It's a correction of the January 23rd meeting minutes.
Okay. Can we address that during the minutes?
Can we?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Can I get a motion to accept the agenda as submitted?
I move to accept the agenda as submitted with the
Okay.
23rd of January added to number 5 with the meeting, when we talk about the minutes.
Support.
Can I get a consensus vote? Those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Thank you, gentlemen and lady. Anybody have any conflict of interest on anything on the agenda?
I do.
Well, we're not
We're not
voting on it.
voting
so-
on anything, so-
You're welcome to make your opinions known, Mark, but I don't think it's conflict of interest
As of yet.
as of yet, you know. And no general public. The minutes. You had a comment about.
Yes, January 23rd. This is the meeting in which I had asked for an additional agenda item on sidewalk maintenance. And I
Yes.
asked that it be a separate agenda item. At the following meeting, I had asked that the minutes be corrected to place it under the separate agenda item. I did notice that before the Board of Trustees, the unamended meeting minutes were put forward, even though we as a committee had voted to approve the amended minutes. And so I'd like those corrected and brought back before this committee for approval.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
That's a motion, by the way.
Okay. Okay, do you
I'll
need a
second
motion
that.
on it? All right, a second. I get a consensus vote. Those in favor say yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay. Miles, would you make sure that happens,
Yeah.
please? Thank you.
I move to approve the minutes for February 13th.
And just make sure it's at the office tomorrow.
We have a motion and support for approval of the minutes on February the 13th. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
I can reach
Thank
out
you.
to Jason for more details.
Miles, do we have any communication that you'd like to share with us?
None at this time.
Okay. Tanya? Do you wanna go, Miles, or do you want Tanya to go first?
I am fine with Tanya from Williams and Works just taking it over, if that's cool with Tanya. And cool with the planning commission.
That's fine with us.
Good evening, everybody. Can you?
Good evening.
Is this on?
It should be on.
Can you hear me fine?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, that's all that matters. Okay, so, I'm here today to present / take comment. So this is the first formal draft of the non-motorized plan that, has been prepared for Bath, Charter Township. So, just to kind of briefly go over, the first, 4 or 5 chapters, you guys had already seen. They were presented to you sort of chapter by chapter as we developed them along the way. And then in January, earlier this winter, but yet in 2024, we had a workshop to go over some non-motorized things in particular. In addition to that workshop, we also incorporated elements of the public engagement that were done last summer in conjunction with our work on developing the Parks and Recreation 5-year plan for the township. There are elements from those engagement events that were specifically done to help get information on the non-motorized plan development. And so we packaged those together and presented them to you in a formal report that will be added as an appendix at the end of this. You guys have already seen that. So since then, developed chapters, I would say 6, 7, and 6 and 7. 5, 6, and 7. And I'm here today I can go over them briefly, if you guys would like. I'm not sure how much time you've had an opportunity to go over them. I'm also happy if people are ready to just kind of jump into comments or questions, I'm happy to take those. So I will take whatever the preference of the planning commission is.
Anybody get any comments?
Can I
Okay.
suggest you just do a quick synopsis of the 5, 6, and 7?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so chapter 5 begins on page 30. So like I said, you have seen the other chapters. Not to say that you shouldn't go over them again, just to make sure that they're what they should be and all that kind of stuff, but that shouldn't be anything new. So, chapter 5 is really what I would say like the heart of the plan. We give a brief overview of a narrative of, the different, parts of the network. And then the network itself is provided on page 31 with highlights of the, sort of the village, Four Corners area of Bath. I've heard it referred to as both ways, as well as what's happening along Park Lake. Miles, if you'll go to the previous page. Thank you. So this shows a combination of the existing facilities as well as the proposed. So just briefly, and again, this is our understanding of the existing facilities. If this needs to be corrected in any way, please let me know. And before I get into the details of the particular type, I will say chapter 6 outlines, when we're using the word trail and side path and bike lane, it specifies what is exactly meant. So setting that aside for a moment, so we've articulated where perhaps a trail could go, a side path, which I'll talk about that in a minute, sidewalks, signed bike routes, and a gravel road route. So just briefly, a trail could be paved or unpaved, but that's a word that we've used to sort of, it's something that's significantly away from a road, right? It's more of like a nature kind of experience. A side path, those are something that the MDOT, Michigan Department of Transportation, is using, and we've seen a lot of townships start to use that. I've seen that in Jackson County, as long as some communities in West Michigan, where townships are not putting in sidewalks, but they're instead putting along a 8-foot asphalted surface, essentially trail, but it's separated from the street by about 4 or 5 feet. It's similar to a sidewalk, but you don't have the sort of the issue with maintenance or sidewalk assessment, right, that property owners have to have. It provides a separated facility in rural areas that can make sense just because of a risk in terms of high speed that cars typically can travel in rural areas. That's what a side path is. Sidewalks, we know what sidewalks are. Signed bike route, that is where there's a particular sign that's needed, and that seems like that's something that the township was interested in the past. I would say not all people who ride bikes are comfortable along signed routes. However, there are those people that, you know, they're looking for something that is a little bit, I'd say, more of a recreational rider on the weekend. You know, people who are looking to go 60, 100 miles, you know, over a weekend ride, that kind of thing. And then gravel road route, that is something that is coming in vogue. There's kind of interest in that. There are roads right in Bath Charter Township that are gravel. People use those as kind of a nice recreational experience. That exists within the Rose Lake State Wildlife Area. You guys may like it, you may not like it. The DNR may or may not like it. So this is, again, just a network that we came up with based on public input, reviewing existing and previous plans, and our understanding of the facilities. So we'll take comments on that in just a little bit. Chapter 6, the township requested that we kind of provide a glossary or kind of a way to help everybody understand sort of a common toolkit, common word. So that way, when one person talks about a bike lane and someone else talks about a bike lane, instead of people having different ideas, hopefully now the township has a resource in this non-motorized plan, what is meant by you know, the different types of words people are using. So if the township in the future can refer to this, that would hopefully provide a common language for township staff, officials, and the public to use. MDOT recently came out with a similar kind of document. A lot of that language came from this. It also gives a little bit of specifications in terms of, you know, construction, width, design, a little bit of language in that sort of realm. And then chapter 7 is what's called an action plan. So what we did is that we took every single segment of proposed network and identified in our understanding of kind of what would be sort of the potentially easiest, and easiest is subjective, easiest to implement, that's most difficult. that was put together by identifying 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different types of criteria, which are outlined on page 44. There are symbols that recognize that. And then, but depending on how many criteria each different road or each different network segment fit, we identified sort of 3 different types of categories of criteria. High priority, medium criteria, or low priority. And then the next several pages identifies through just a table the different types of facilities and what they should be high priority, medium priority, or low priority. One moment. And so we have a whole different category, or we have different criteria for side paths, for trails, for sidewalks. Broke it down that way. So that's a real high-level overview, and so I'd be welcome to take any comments, questions, edits.
Just a quick question on
Yeah.
this. Who exactly was at the table when applying the criteria to each of those
Yep.
projects?
I made it based on the information that I had. So located near a school or public facility, nearest relative, but
Okay.
use my best judgment.
Yep.
Again, located near things, it was a best judgment kind of thing. Mobility upgrade, a lot of that was based on public input that was gathered over the course of basically the last year. Filling gaps in the existing non-motorized network, again, that's based on public input, as well as kind of what makes sense from developing a connected network perspective. Listed in existing plans, that's objective, and then supported by community engagement, you'd find something that the community, the public wanted.
I have lots of feedback, but I want to give
That's great.
my colleagues a chance to,
I just had a very short
Yeah.
comment on page 30, under gravel road riding. I think it's maybe the.
Right here.
Yeah, the very last sentence just says, there could be additional recreation and tourism options on this road. And I was just curious which road that meant. It did mention Rose Lake, but there are a couple gravel roads that go adjacent to the Rose Lake area. that
Yeah,
was my
so
only question
what was
there.
identified just through our understanding of developing a network would be on Stoll Road, so if there is, so some of these things, you guys might be like, this makes no sense, others of this is like, wow, this is great, let's do more of this. So at this time, it was developed for Stoll Road, but, the idea is if that's, the township could decide either way if that's something that they want to, if you guys wanna entertain.
building off of that, I know someone who actually does gravel biking for recreation. And it's not just a road, it's all the gravel roads in the township, and Bath is a destination spot for that. And so, among folks who live in East Lansing, so maybe adjust it to say, on these types of roads?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing too is that, so if you know that it's a gravel road riding as Bath is like a destination, through this plan, does the township wanna elevate that? Do you guys wanna highlight that and start to create a network and, a network for gravel road riding that would start to draw people and, bring people here, and that helps the local economy? So that's a good point, that's a great question, and that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out, if that's, there's an appetite or interest in that.
I'll bet one reason why people like to ride gravel roads in Bath is because Clinton County does a really good job of maintaining the gravel roads compared to other townships that I've worked with and been with. That's probably one reason why. Because Drumheller Road, I drive that a few times, and that's really good gravel road. I think it is, anyway.
It's good by my standard, for sure,
Yeah.
but our standards might be a little bit different. I hear a lot of feedback about our gravel roads, but I also have driven gravel roads in Metro Detroit and seen what a truly bad gravel road looks like.
Yeah.
People here in the Lansing area, I feel,
Yeah.
are truly blessed by the, paved and unpaved roads we have, even though they might not feel like that on 127 this week, but,
That one divot on Clyce Road that I have to avoid every day.
yeah,
No, we do have, well-maintained roads.
yeah.
Anything else?
I had one other question, it's in a similar vein, but on page 14, which is earlier in the packet, there's a graphic.
page?
14?
My whole screen froze up, so I can't look at it.
Oh, that's right. Alright, here we go.
There's a graphic with purple circles shaded on there, and I just wasn't sure what those were representing, based on there not being anything on the key.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So, this was our way of kind of identifying, key nodes, and then the network is connecting, the nodes. So our understanding of where like these areas were,
That would be a node.
good point. We will update the key, to reflect what those are, as well as the, let's say the color points.
Another thing too, I'll just say, if that's okay, if anyone is reviewing this, and sees something later that they didn't see today, please email me so I can pass along to Tanya. Tanya, I know I kinda owed you an email on my review of it too, and I had 3 like high level things, and this was one of them. But, so I'll get that to you in the coming days, but if anybody else has anything, just, you don't have to like figure it out tonight.
Yeah, so I will just reiterate, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please, Tanya, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, so today, the overall point is, I'm here to take anything, but also, you know, work out with Miles, whether, we give you guys 2 weeks to give me edits back, related to all this, but I'm here to present this, sort of give you guys the opportunity to discuss this among yourselves, if we need to make some decisions and that kind of thing. But like, ultimately, when you guys are done with this, we'd move forward with like a plan adoption and recommending it to the township board, but, so anyways,
Page 45, the first one, it says Nichols Road to Miller, Wishwasher Park. I'm like, where's Miller Road? And it's actually, Miller's referring to the store. So I didn't get there till, just tonight, it just like hit me. So probably should be explained somehow. And then on your keys, for me, it was, I love it, but I wondered if there was a way to make all the keys like, so I could just look at it and
A
see.
little bit larger.
No, like, all the walking guys would be in row 1 and
Oh, in the
all the.
same column?
Yeah, all in the same column. Might be easier for me to follow instead of trying to have to go back. You know what I'm saying? So like, the first column, you have all hikers. Second column, you have all bikes. Third column, you have connecting routes.
I can add to that too, because when I first looked at number 1 Park Lake Road, the box of criteria met is full. So I was like, oh, it meets all the criteria. But now I see it only meets 5 of 8, which is not
yes.
all.
Do you-
So I feel like it gives almost a misleading
Do you see what I'm-
perception.
I think, yeah, so I think just the idea of laying it out,
Visually, so I could see that in the first row,
Yep.
it's not met this criteria, in the vertically up and down.
The added benefit is those criteria that have very few, projects
Yeah.
might be something that we could look at, filling or, or accommodating in other ways.
Like low hanging fruit, so to speak.
Or maybe, yeah.
I got that from a planner.
Anything else?
I've got some comments, but.
Go ahead.
hey, one moment, I'm trying
I
to,
mean, I don't know,
She's
that's
still
just,
writing.
that's just for me,
Okay.
that
Yep.
might not be everybody here.
I had the same-
it sounds like there's similar sentiment, so, again, like, I'm always of the mindset, this is your plan, you can please be as critical as you want, cause this is yours. When I'm done, it's up to you guys to then turn around and implement it, so let's make this usable.
Right. Yeah, we're the ones that have to work with it.
That's right, that's right.
Go ahead, Jason.
So I'm gonna start simple and get more probably
Great.
outside the control because of the community engaged process. So page 4, the citation for the population charts, in as much as it goes back to 1980, I think is incomplete. It probably should be a general US census, et cetera, as opposed to just the 2020 census. That's super minor.
Oh, so like 1980 to 2020, is that what you mean?
Yeah, or more generalized citation to the US Census. So looking at the 2020 census, I don't think they report out 1980 statistics, so that's a different part of the US Census.
Okay,
So you could just say, take out 2020 and just say US Census Bureau.
okay, sure, okay, sure.
Next page, this is a stylistic in terms of presenting data.
Yeah.
So with the bar charts, typically what I would do is add the values above the bars and take out that y-axis. It just makes it easier to know what the values are.
So you take out 3,250 or 2,500?
And so each bar value, or each bar has a value associated with it.
So this one's population, so the value is people who are between 0 and 9 years old?
Yeah, so 0-9, it looks that there's about 1,000 individuals. Again, this
Right.
is stylistic, and so
Yeah.
this is, if you have, it's something I would do, but if it's.
So then you just, I'm just trying to understand.
Sorry,
So
I would put the-
1,000 and then take out like the 0, 500, 1,000, 1,500.
Yeah, so take out the
Okay.
y-axis and then add the value above the bar, just so that when you're
Yeah.
looking at it, you know, all right, for individuals aged 20 to 29, it's, 2,430.
Is that okay with everybody else?
It's also in the weeds, so.
That's fine. I mean,
I
you
think
can
it's
still
unnecessary.
keep the y-axis. You
What's
just-
that?
I said you could still keep the y-axis, then you just have
Oh,
the
yeah.
specific
Yeah.
data points on there.
Take out the grid lines to make it a little bit cleaner. Again, that's stylistic and very much into the weeds. So, a little bit later, this is in chapter 4,
What page you on, Jason?
27. So I've got one comment, so goal 1, objective 1. And this is more of a question. So sub-items A, C, and D are already on the slate for being addressed this summer. And so I wondered about their appropriateness for being placed in this plan.
So if they're already gonna be addressed, then that would be like, then they
Why
would
haven't
be
it?
removed, right?
I mean, I'm sympathetic to having easy wins in terms
Oh,
of.
no, I agree with you, I mean, so I don't know all of the particulars as well as you guys
Yeah.
do. So yeah, we can remove A, C, and D and, keep, and I think some of this is a little bit of like what the public has said, what we know, and so like, this is where we clean it up, right? So let's, if that's okay, I agree with removing those and just keeping B, but then if we need to add others.
Maybe perhaps it could be reordered where it's slated to be completed in 2024 under the Safe Routes to School grants. So that it's a
Yep, yep.
I
both
think that's a
and.
better idea.
That, because if you don't put it in here, and somebody comes up and says, well, why
My
aren't you?
voice,
Yeah,
That was an item that we really wanted done, it's not in here,
Yep.
but if it's in the safe,
right.
So yeah, we'll just change that to make A, C, and D, like slated under the, slated to be completed by 2024, and then B will be like its own standalone, in the future kind of thing.
So this next comment is a bit more challenging, and I bring this up only for discussion purposes, because I think adjusting it is a little bit problematic because of the community input that has been gathered. So I want to honor that. But so looking at goal 2, again on page 27, develop an integrated non-motorized network that connects the significant destinations. I want to focus on that a little bit because in my understanding and looking at various aspects of this plan, there are 2 hubs, primary hubs that are of interest to this community. And this is the hub around the Bath Village area, around Cousins Park and Park Lake, and I would say at Wiswasser Park. And one of the things that, inasmuch as this is kind of a long-range plan, I found it a bit challenging that all the pieces of projects were disconnected, and the vision really wasn't about connecting Cousins Park to Wiswasser Park, and how much of value that would be to our community. Now, I wasn't a part of the community engagement process, so maybe that didn't come out. I know that was something that came out of the Safe Routes to School planning process. But in terms of the goal here, really thinking about how do we connect our significant destinations, those really are our 2. And you would accomplish so much more in terms of having a broader vision of here's what we want to connect, because within that connection, you would connect the various housing developments here on the north side of town to Park Lake, which is you know, an incredibly important recreation center for our community. And vice versa, those who are south by Park Lake, access to some of the cultural elements of our community related to Cousins Park, and especially what's being planned for its future and it as a destination and space of meaning for our community, both long term. And so, you know, I was a bit, and again, this is not a negative statement about you or the process.
Nobody, I have never heard that brought forward before, like, in the year I've spent, you know, listening and participating, you're the first person to have raised that, so,
And maybe I'm off the left field here.
No, I think you made a good
I
point.
think you made a good point, and I'm surprised I didn't think of it,
Yeah, I didn't
because
really
I
agree.
went to the meetings, and nobody, I looked at her and I'm like, no, nobody brought that up.
Right.
So, I mean, if we play within the space, you know, when I think about these types of plans, you know, I want something that gets me energized and excited, something that I can see in my head like a vision. But at the same time, you know, with working within the planning process, it's nice to have discrete, achievable chunks of projects that we can work towards.
Just so we're clear, that's what I think, cause we're always filling out the grants and we're going for grants, and I gotta be realistic about what we can go for.
Yep. So as a balance, having vision and achievable, you know, discrete projects, I don't know if that's something that could be, and maybe it's too late in this process, to have some visioning statements around the long-term objective that may not occur in the next 5 years, but that we are working towards is this connection between these two significant hubs of non-motorized pathways.
That was kind of put pretty good.
But, not even that, but the Rose Lake piece, again, being new to the area, you're talking about the park. I know Park Lake, but the parks within the city, I don't. So, but if you were trying to connect the three and then be able to connect to the Meridian and Lansing, East Lansing, points also.
Yeah.
They mentioned that in here, but he's specifically referring to our actual town.
Yeah.
Connecting our 2 points of town.
Which is our most near and short-term goal, and I think that's the goal that, you know, on the staff side and the public side is talked about the most.
Right.
Which I think you're right, needs to be like emphasized.
It's not really in this plan, though.
Yeah, I mean, we have obviously like that, there's mapping to show that it's indicated, but I don't know if it's emphasized to.
right, yeah, so I mean, so 2 points, like, if we also, like, Rose Lake, nobody ever talked about connecting specifically to Rose Lake, so like, we can draw lines, I'm trying to balance the pragmaticness with like the big vision. I mean, understanding townships have limited resources, but I mean, I too get excited by, you know, big, bold plans. Just trying to balance that with the township's ability to like achieve them over time, and all it takes sometimes is a couple easy wins to build that momentum, so in 10 years you have that, you know, amazing asset. So what I would offer for reflection is that, like, I would say in some ways it's the good news that there is like enough routes to get there, but I agree that there's nothing that has that like explicitly stated. And I could see some language being put in the plan under goal 2 objectives or somewhere else, and even having it identified differently on this non-motorized network, calling out the parks, because we didn't do that. We didn't highlight any recreational assets or any assets really other than the state-owned facilities and the wildlife, the Bengal Wildlife Center. So if that needs to be amended and, you know, put on the maps and sort of strengthened and highlighted, I mean, as long as the township planning the planning commission wants to do that, I'm fine with that. When we're making a plan and making sort of, you know, bringing a draft plan to put forward, it's the balance of the public, you know, what we've, the consultant, what I've heard, what we've heard, with our experience and expertise, and if nobody's raised like an idea, we don't know about it. So,
Right.
this is the time to do that, because we're still in, like, this is very draft form.
Yeah.
So I would, yeah,
So-
continue.
Good point, I like it.
John, could I ask that maybe, we ask Miles to go back and just watch the video and, cause you had a good wording in there and how to attach it, and that we could just
Yeah.
use something like that.
Send
You
it to
could get with
Tanya.
her that.
And Tanya, I'll probably give you some of my notes from this meeting, but I'll also provide you with a link to the video yourself, just so you and your staff could watch
This
this.
is video?
This is recorded, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
Just
wish I
that.
would've talked more.
cause I thought that might be useful, cause you yourself, Tanya, might not be the one actually doing the mapping, it might be one of your staff. A couple of things too, Tanya, I did see when I was reviewing this today that I think in some of the state plans, and it might even be the county non-motorized plan, they did show a connection from Rose Lake to kind of our Four Corners area. And that took the form of a paved shoulder, shared bike lane. So that, to me, cause I am into realistic and pragmatic things, I think it'd be hard pressed to fund some kind of off-street trail there. But I think it would be more realistic to have some kind of shared bike lane.
So, a little confusion, where are you talking about?
Yep, so if you look on the map here, how it was shown on the county and the, state plan.
What page are you on? I'm sorry, Bob.
Yep, this is page 31.
Yep,
From the Four Corners area, which is a kind of this downtown node here, village area here, it showed a shared bike lane running along Clark into the Rose Lake area, then joining up with this,
Peacock Road?
yep,
okay.
and then that would lead you into the Rose Lake.
So, here's where, like, I'm actually glad we're having this discussion, because
Good.
paved shoulders in rural areas make me uncomfortable.
Okay.
But the uncomfortableness is like, it's a conversation that non-motorized planners and engineers are kind of like in real time having. So, paved shoulders are an acceptable facility if they're wide. We're not talking 3 inches, we're talking the recommendation is between 4 to 8 feet.
Yep.
It's also helpful if they're actually maintained. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the shoulder right by the highway, how it's full of gravel and dirt. So I'm assuming the township doesn't have authority over this particular road, it's the
No,
road
we'd be
commission?
working through the county road commission.
Yeah, right, so you'd have to work with them to do that. Shoulders are more agreeable, certainly, they're less expensive, however, fewer people will use it, although it's better than nothing. And I'd say there's somewhat, like, sometimes there's a liability involved, and the reason I'm saying that is, so in your toolkit chapter, there is, on page 39 and 40, there is more information coming about if you're using more engineering techniques when you're making your decisions for bike facilities.
Sure.
Vehicular speeds as well as vehicular traffic counts. What that is, what is a better facility, depending on who you're gonna build this for, what are you trying to do?
Yeah.
I'm saying this as the consultant because I feel like if I don't say it, I would be remiss and you guys wouldn't be informed. Now, however, it is less expensive, it'll be easier to get done, and, you could probably do it quote-unquote tomorrow in planning terms. A separated side path might take 5 or 10 years, for that appetite for people to understand that. It makes me a little uncomfortable, and that's why you don't see a lot of any proposed paved shoulders, because I just don't feel comfortable with that. Where I felt like it makes sense, I put in the side paths. All of that aside, it's an acceptable facility, people use it. And, that's something that, especially if the township is comfortable with putting in, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
So,
And I guess I am, as I stated even before, but more on that side of like, I'm trying to get things.
something is better than nothing.
Yeah, and with the Park Lake area, I think, off-street side trail there, as I've talked on the north side of the lake, is totally realistic, and we have the density, and we have the demand, and we have the means, and we even have some of the property in place, thanks to the board, been buying up land there to achieve a goal. So, I see it both ways, but I do see your point, Tanya,
Well-
obviously,
And that's why in this toolkit chapter, I put in that information, so that way over time, the township might say that you guys might, as you're having this discussion and you're making those decisions about where to put, your facilities in, you have the information to make those decisions. So, for example, if you feel like side paths aren't realistic along Slate Road, it would be actually more realistic to put in a proposed shoulder, we can do that. you know, some consultants have no problem slapping on a paved shoulder, cause we're
Yeah.
putting connection, and it's better than other. It gives me pause because of safety concerns, and we're not building a network that's best for all people. But, you know, again, that's balancing the pragmatic nature with, you know, some of this, so, you know.
I think in some of these areas, it really depends on the topography of those roads. Slate Road, for example, there's no shoulder to pave nor path. It just drops right down into the swamp.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it
that's
would be
the
a
nitty-gritty.
significant cost,
Right,
even
it's-
for the low-cost option, that would be a
Right.
significant cost in those
Right, and that's
areas.
why I'm like, you know, there's a balance here, right? Like, where do you spend your, you know, your couple $1,000s, so to speak, or whatever, so, sure. But we'll put in a proposed shoulder there from, the village area over to Peacock.
Could we, I would almost think amending that to Robson Road. Because if you go to Robson Road, then you also have access to the nature trail there on Robson Road. And then Robson Road is a low-traffic gravel road, which takes you right up to Stoll Road, also a low-traffic
That's a good
gravel
connection.
road. That would be the route I would take if I were going
And that
to
gets you
Rose
off
Lake
the
from
high
downtown.
That's such a good suggestion, cause that would get you off the high speed Clark.
So you're saying
Clark Road.
Robson down to Stoll?
Yes, that would be the preferred route that I would take if I were biking this. I would not take Clark Road all the way.
So if you look at the screen, Tanya, just to be clear, so she's talking about like, instead of doing what I said, 4 corners all the way down to here, going 4 corners to Robson, that will help you loop into kind of the township's well-maintained park here, and then get you off this high-speed paved road onto this side.
Do you want us to show, you want us to show the parks on this map?
I think it would be helpful.
Okay,
What does everybody else think?
Helpful.
yep. Okay, we'll do that.
When we start talking about paved shoulders too, I think we gotta be careful, make sure those darn shoulders are wide enough depending on the speed of traffic. A 4-foot shoulder, for far as I'm concerned, is almost worthless.
Right. So
So-
that,
I think that's.
that's where, when you're talking to the county, the road commission, and this plan's adopted, you can hold up this figure, which is a Federal Highway Administration figure, and you can talk with them about how wider is safer, especially depending on more speeds
Yeah.
and traffic.
Yeah.
So trying to equip you to have those conversations.
Also, Robson Road is the point where Clark Road switches to, from 45 to 55, heading
true,
east.
yes.
That's a good reason
It
to
is
get rid of that.
45 and then 35. I mean, that is the posted speed, but
Yeah, yeah.
All good points.
Under funding opportunities, a couple thoughts. We've exhausted Safe Routes to School, and it's unlikely that we'll get additional funding. So I'm not sure how helpful that will be to include.
Pages, what page are you on?
I'm sorry, 41.
Thank you. Yep,
So we were successfully able to get the infrastructure grant and 2 additional programming grants. So I don't have a sense that we'll be qualified, it's to apply for continued funding. Now, I think there's continued opportunities to, keep that project going, but that would not be a funding opportunity. That would be a,
so two questions, or 2 points. So do you think that, so it's like these non-motorized plans and they're, you know, let's just give them roughly a 10-year time span. It could be 5 if everything gets done and all of a sudden you guys come across millions of dollars, all the way up to 20 years. Do you feel like you've sort of tapped that out over the next 10 years and that language shouldn't be there? The other thing is I was at a conference recently where there was a discussion, and this is a little bit different, but it was the idea of the Safe Routes to School National Organization. Somebody there was talking about, it wasn't a funded program, but Safe Routes to Parks, and just the concept of, you know, taking this idea of safe routes to something and expanding it and how the community can do it.
yeah.
So I'm just wondering if we leave it in there, leaving a kernel of an idea, would sort of help facilitate that, like in, let's just say, 5 years of institutional knowledge changes. But that's, I mean, that's just, I totally understand what you're saying with the local or the recent activity.
I think probably should be left in there, cause there's other avenues also.
So my recommendation in that spirit is to go one up level from the Safe Routes to School program and look at that funding agency, as well as spend a little bit more time focusing on Michigan Fitness Foundation as potential, agencies to keep our eyes on for, non-motorized pathway related funding.
So I would suggest that maybe then we tweak the language in this particular paragraph that talk about, Bath has been successful and perhaps there should be, focus somewhere else for a little bit, so it leaves that idea there, and again, that sort of that legacy, acknowledges that successful legacy. But yet, like you said, keep an eye on Michigan Fitness Council, because there could be more stuff coming in 5 years, so.
Yep.
Or, I mean, I don't know that, but just sort of that, okay.
And then one other point is, I didn't see any language around millages as a source of funding. And I know probably half the people are glaring at me as.
Do you wanna raise that? I mean, we can
So-
entertain that in this.
So I personally do wanna raise it because it's something that we haven't utilized as a township, and it is an important tool to accomplish these visions. And my sense of our community is that we have the goodwill, and based on the data within this report, there's probably a probability of good success of going after a, one-time millage to support this. And so, I just think that having that language in this document will help us continue that conversation about, this is a tool in our toolbox, not ignoring it as a tool in our toolbox.
So I would ask then, is this like, I'm assuming that it would be a recreation millage, it wouldn't be just a millage for non-motorized facilities? Have you?
Depends. Adjacent Township has strictly a non-motorized pathway millage. Meridian Township, and they've had that in
Meridian,
place.
okay.
They've had that in place for probably 30 years.
Nice, okay,
And and I can't remember the time, when they pass it, it's usually a 10-year spot. They pass it for 10 years.
Yep.
They've never had a problem passing that.
nice, okay,
The other thing they use that for is maintenance of the pathways.
Right.
That's something we talked about earlier, how we're gonna maintain these things.
Right.
That millage can do that.
yep. And that sets you up for success for DNR trails, cause their question now is, well, great, you can build it, but who's gonna maintain it? So
Yep.
it's good to have that. So we'll include language for non-motorized village, looking, and having language to set you up for, hey, look next door, they've had success.
I'll probably vote it down, but.
Like I said, I
All
have
farmers
colleagues that are not
All
some-
farmers have to pay
So here's something else, something else, and I don't remember. So there's another large grant, federal level grant, and the reason I'm sort of bringing this up is because part of the township is within the urbanized area of the Tri-County Planning Commission. So a lot of communities, particularly large urban areas, or those that are a part of a metropolitan planning organization jurisdiction, it's kind of a long, fancy way of saying you get special federal money because you have a certain population and your transportation system needs further support. So Tri-County Planning Commission, they could in the future go after what's called a Safe Streets for All plan, safety plan, transportation plan, action plan. Other metropolitan planning organizations, or MPOs, are doing that across the strait. Some cities are, Lansing, anyhow.
Just
Once
that-
this plan-
That's something that we're looking at now, I'll talk to you guys more about that.
So once this plan has been, if the MPO decides to do this plan, and the plan gets adopted, it then sets up those jurisdictions who are within the boundaries of the MPO to go after federal dollars, particularly for non-motorized projects.
Right.
I can put a little paragraph in here for that, okay.
That was one of my 3 things to talk about.
Sorry to steal your
Because
thunder.
we're looking at the SF4 grants and we wanted to get a mention on this.
So again, a key thing to know is you have to have this plan, a plan in place before you can successfully go after the infrastructure. So I'm not sure where Tri-County might be in that, or even if the county has done one,
We
but,
did some research and we think we can go in on our own if they fail to do so.
cool. Okay, anyways, good comments on the funding.
One last comment. With the conversation in mind about connecting the 2 hubs, I wonder if there might be an opportunity for you to reconsider your criteria allocation to the various projects. perhaps keep in mind the connection between Wiswasser Park and, Wiswasser, Cousins Park and Wiswasser Park might have more advantageous or, you know, meet additional criteria.
Sure, I mean, this is your guys' plan, so what, like, among yourselves, if that's like its own special criteria, and any project like along that route, for example, should get like an extra bump, you know, essentially it's its own criteria, any project that's along that route would like get extra points. You know, that makes a lot of sense, especially if it's like, you know, if it's identified in like your goal statements. So I'd say talk amongst yourselves if that, you know.
Yeah.
Is that a yes, do it? Or
That's
yes,
a-
you guys will talk more?
I think,
Didn't we already say
what's
that?
the consensus? I think it's a good idea. It gives us a better plan that's got more potential for development and implementation, because it's well documented that that's one of our goals,
So,
for grants anyhow.
so that being adding additional criterion, related to connecting hubs?
Correct.
Connecting hubs or just connecting those two parks in particular?
Well, yeah,
I
probably.
would say those two in particular.
I mean,
Yeah,
so the criteria, like, you can make it your own, you just have to like objectively, like, you know,
Yeah.
rationally make sense of the criteria and whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, like, if this is, in my mind, it makes sense that if you guys wanna elevate these projects that connects these two parks, like, it's a home run, like, let's do it.
So, I mean, I look at, there's two strategies. And the reason it came up was when I was looking at the classification, you have the three red, this is on page 45, the three red, and then, you know, Wiswasser to Josephine, then goes down to orange. And that didn't quite resonate in my head as to why Wiswasser to Josephine didn't have the connection to, I guess, the little shop thing. And so I'm not quite clear which strategy is better in terms of putting, you know, having, you know, that whole pathway having an equal set of criteria that it meets, or adding an additional criterion that articulates that this is something that will connect hubs.
Where is Josephine?
Where is, yeah,
It's across from the Parkway Creamery area.
Oh, other way.
oh, that really
Right there.
tiny,
Yeah.
it's, so, what is the, like, what was your,
Well, so,
just say it again.
so Nichols Road to Miller or Wiswasser Park, State Road to Nichols Road, I mean, these got high markings. But the Wiswasser Park to Josephine Street, and then I wasn't quite sure what the Bath Community Center to Culvert was. All those, at least in my head, are all equally weighted in terms of importance. Now, you know, the proximity to Wiswasser Park and moving, I don't know if that's north, to Hawks Ridge, I think I can see that being staged as, you know, incrementally getting there, but all equally important. So,
So yeah, if we add a criteria, it would like that, this would essentially serve those, it would bump all those up a little bit. Also, originally when we had put this together, high priority was 6 or more criteria, and none of them met that, so I had to like bump it down a little bit.
Oh,
So,
okay.
I mean, like, we can bump things up and bump things, this is what we want to make of it, you just have to rationally, you know, make the case, and that's what this is. I will say, if I add a criteria, that might also add bump up a couple other projects and bump a few down, and we'll just have to see how that comes out in the wash. So, I mean, you know, part of this process is I'll take all these edits, send it back out to you guys, and if there needs to be a communication, you know, like, for example, between like yourself and if everybody is okay with it, like, over email, you know, you and Miles and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
we'll just
We can
blind copy
tweak
all
that, yeah. You can't email everybody on the planning commission, right, Open Meetings Act and all that kind of stuff. But, sounds like everybody's in agreement, and so we'll just kind of work on tweaking that to have it make sense.
Yeah, and I can facilitate those emails back and forth and just blind copy you guys and be a filter for information. I'm great with that, and if Tanya, if you're willing to play around with some of those rankings, Jason, I do think that's a good rationalization of a ranking.
Yeah, I do too. Good point.
outside that, I mean, few minor comments, it's an excellent report.
Yeah, it is. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, that's really.
I'm glad to hear that, and also, sometimes it's hard to tell if a community is going to, like the side path thing, that's gonna more money, and, depending on what people have said, sometimes the public, what they say is different than what township officials are looking for, so, I'm glad that you guys feel comfortable. I also appreciate your comment about respecting and like listening to what the public has said, because that's part of this process, and, it's part of my job is to make sure that their, comments are included and along the way. So with that said, I would say, give you guys a week or so to get other comments, 2 weeks to Miles, and then pass on to me. I will be making, and my colleagues will be making updates to the plan. We'll give you another draft. Again, we'll give you 10-ish days, because you guys would have seen it at this point, to get that back. From here, then, once you guys are comfortable with it, it would be brought forward, back to the planning commission. This is the last time you're gonna see me. So Miles would bring it back, to you guys. You guys would vote to, recommend the township board adopt it. And the township boards adopt it. And then, there you go, you have your updated non-motorized plan. So, that's kind of the process. We're down to the nitty gritty, but there's not quote unquote that much more left to do, just the super important part. So, I appreciate your guys' comments. These are really, really good. I appreciate your feedback. And I'm glad you guys are feeling comfortable with this plan and moving forward for Bath.
The addition I really like was your toolkit. I don't know whose idea it was to put that in there, right?
That was a good
That really
idea.
clarifies a lot of things, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, right. I mean, people use trail and bike lane and shoulder all differently, and now it'll take some time, but you can help, help. It's just about culture change and expanding the conversation.
It was clean.
Yep.
Good, that's
Yeah,
what we were
a very
going
good
for.
idea. Anything else? All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
You have a good trip back.
Thank you.
Just read the top bit, so just so I can.
Miles, do you wanna go ahead with the development?
Yeah, alright, so in front of everyone tonight is I guess the next item in front of everyone tonight is a development that we're looking at, so this would be under our land use categories of plan unit development, and also under the category of condominiums, within the plan unit, condominiums are a subcategory of plan unit development as defined in our ordinance. I'll go ahead and just go to their map here, and I'll talk about a little bit of the history, cause I think that's gonna be important tonight of how we got here and how this can be evaluated. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about private roads and private drives, and so I wanna address how I think, in my conversations with Bert Gale, that at least on the planning department side, we're attempting to view this, because we are a little bit outside of our normal views, but that's because of how this plan unit developed, and how it really, any planning unit development is viewed in the township and generally in planning in general. So just to take it outside of this one, I was using this example earlier today to explain this to somebody, just so we're not singling out any, single plan unit development. So this is Hidden Valley up here on Webster Road, just up the street from us, so this is a 3-phase PUD. All 3 phases were approved, prior to the recession in 2008. And phase 1 was implemented prior to the recession in 2008. Then phase 2, then the project died, as most cul-de-sacs did in 2008, and then nothing was built until the market started to relapse, or, relapse is a bad word. But the market started to come back, in 2012, and they implemented phase 2 and even, amended the plan in phase 2 to make this branch off the north here, making a connection. And then, now we have phase 3 that will probably come in, they're slow to build out in this area, but I would say like 2027, 2030, somewhere in there. Now, when these phases come for the plan unit developments, developers are encouraged by municipalities to phase these things in, and that is so our infrastructure can scale up, that is so if any changes get made in construction techniques, drive techniques, they're not locked in to whatever what was presented 20 years ago, cause it can take 20 years for these to build out. But within the PUD language, we're also limited on once the PUD is initially presented and the overall plan is established, if they're not widely deviating from that plan, we're encouraged to evaluate it from, and amend it from that original approval. So not viewing it as like this is a totally new, on a totally new set of rules. So, why that matters for this development in particular is because, and I'll go to GIS here. This development is served by a number of private drives. Obviously, our private drive language was changed in 2016, and then recently changed here about a month ago. However, this development's approval, which was also in 16, falls within their original scope. Is your title CEO of HDI or president? Owner of HDI, okay, I just wanted to get that right. Provided some, historical language and historical approvals they've obtained. And then I went ahead and dug up our historical minutes to verify that this is all true. Not that we don't trust you, but just, we gotta do our job. And in their case, it was actually in 2016, it must have been during the process of when private drives were being discussed, even a variance was secured to allow them to hook into Forest View and establish private drives here and another private drive circuit here, doing a similar U shape. Now, they're gonna amend that tonight, but then, so language was changed, variance was secured, plan was presented, plan was approved, implementation of phase 2 happened, and phase 3 is happening now. So, I guess what I'm saying, cause again, my job, one of any planner's job in this community is to shore up liability and not get us all sued. And so I'm saying something was approved in the past, kind of like twofold in the form of a variance and then in the form of a master plan. And they're here tonight to amend said approved master plan, and because of the nature of how PUDs are phased in, they're not always subject to, and it's been not always viewed that they're on like a 1-year implementation timeline for the PUD because of the nature of phasing. So I don't know if I explained that correctly, but that's my understanding of it, and that's
Can you
my
define
conversation with
PUD
Bert.
for me?
Yeah, oh, sorry, PUD is a planned unit development.
Okay.
Cul-de-sacs, subdivisions are commonly used terms, in place of a planned unit development. So this is a planned unit development, that other example is a planned unit development. They can take the form of single-family homes, they can take the form of site condos, they can take the form of condominiums. There's a lot of subcategories within a planned unit development. So that is the background on how we got here, the way in which I guess myself and Bert Gale feel we have to work within the scope. Now, what is on the table is how their drives are orientated, any kind of dimensional standard that wants to be talked about, any kind of construction standard that wants to be talked about, how the dimensional standards of property, landscaping, drainage, all that's on the table.
So I have 2 questions. One is, what is to protect the municipality from approving a PUD and a developer sitting on that in perpetuity? Do we not have articulate expiration dates for the plan?
I think you could make a good case if it was to go to court that like they just sat on it for way too long. And what I've seen in the case law language is developers saying on, and this is what actually happened with Park Lake Apartments. Because they kinda had a phased in development, but then when they came back for that next phase and they tried to make this case to us, like, hey, we're just implementing the next phase. We were like, no, the next phase was for 7 site condominiums, and you're coming back with a 40-unit apartment. You're wildly outside of what's been approved. Now, for them, in this case, I think the original plan, okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, was like 50 units of housing in a U-shaped drive
For the north side?
for the north side.
54, I believe,
And so now, how many units are
48.
48? So they're going down in units and they're slightly changing the drives within the scope of a 5-year period. We didn't feel like that met the bar of like wildly changing what was previously approved. To your point, there is a limit, it's a little bit subjective, but we feel like this is inside that limit.
Okay. The second one is, for years, we've had issues with that entrance off of Marsh Road in terms of the maintenance. Has that been resolved?
I think that is all on the table to talk about.
Okay. I mean, that intersection is just gonna be that much more problematic than what it is.
And just for another, little tidbit too of how this will move forward. Tonight, the purpose of this is an introduction, is to get the introduction to them, cause I know for you guys, there's a lot of new faces. Even though I've worked with HDI quite a bit over the years, because they're giving us, anywhere from 4 to 8 building permits a year at this point, the entirety of my time here. They're new to some of you, you guys are new, some of you are new to them. We'll do the introduction tonight, then we will get back with them about additional information we'll request through our agency review process. Obviously, the road commission will be part of that review, drain commission, all the other partnering agencies. Then we will come back with full information prior to a vote, so we'll be able to hear what the road commission thinks, what some of their concerns are and all that. But by no means let that stifle the conversation from what this body's thoughts are tonight. And after that, John, I think that covers my thoughts. I'll turn it back over to you, or if you wanna invite the developer up, or however you wanna do it.
What's the planning commission, would you like to have the developer give us a,
I'd love to hear the vision.
okay? Sir, you wanna take the podium, please?
Hello, I'm Chris Drobny with HDI Development and also HDI Builders. I can give you just a quick history of the entire development. I don't know how familiar any of you are with all of it, but, actually, Miles, if you have the GIS.
Yep.
Everything east of Forest View into Perry Road, we started that in, I think 1996, as a condominium project. And it was 4 phases, and we did the last phase was Meadowbrook Drive. That one came at about, just before 2008, when everything tanked. Just about lost it all. But what was originally planned was those 4 phases, and then the area where it says Willowbrook, and then the area we're talking about now was originally planned for apartment buildings. We were thinking down stepping from residential to high density and then commercial along Marsh Road. Funding, and also when we got houses in here, obviously people didn't want apartments behind them once they were there. So we changed that to make this whole area the same as the original Meadowbrook. And I don't know how familiar any of you are with Meadowbrook, but that's 143 units in there, houses. And there's 1 lot left in there that's not built on. Willowbrook Drive, that was our first 2 phases, I guess you'd call that, of this new, since the other one was already approved and there was a homeowners association there, we had to do this as a new phase, or a new condominium project. So instead of Meadowbrook, it's Meadowbrook West Residential, because it was planned for apartments like that. Now, my recommendation was to try to get it to be included in that whole neighborhood together, so they're all one neighborhood. That neighborhood, Meadowbrook, the original neighborhood, did not want to do that, the board, because they were a volunteer board and they thought that it was too much to take on. And they said, if we do that, we're gonna have to have a management company manage it. 2 years later, they have a management company doing it. But, so my encouragement is still to combine those. But anyways, that's kind of the history. Now, what's different about, if you go back to the plan now, there's that horseshoe for Willowbrook Drive there, which is, yeah, there. And what was originally planned was a horseshoe up above on the north side. And the issue that I had personally with that is on the north property line, it drops off steeply. And so to make anything work there, the problem with it dropping off steeply on the back of the lots is that you get water that wants to drain into the houses, which is difficult to deal with as a builder. And so I redesigned those lots with Kebs, the engineers, so that if we have two cul-de-sacs there, and it gives us fewer lots, but I think it's a more buildable, more livable area. What we can do is we can drain between those two. If I can point up here, we drain through here. This will be a low area, and so that will be our water retention. But we have more space to drain the water into that area if we do it that way. So that's the reason that we changed it from one long horseshoe to two cul-de-sacs. And like I said, it took us, I think, from 54 lots down to 48 lots in this particular phase. So I think that's most of it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I got a couple of comments, I guess, questions. You put the, one of my concerns are right along the main road, lot 37, I think it is.
Right here.
Yeah, that one there, that's a really small lot. And along the south side of that lot, you've got a public space or something, open space, what's that for? Why isn't that just part of the lot? That whole, you've got,
There's a sidewalk that runs along there to
Yeah.
connect Meadowbrook through all the way to Marsh Road.
right,
So that sidewalk will be in that space. That's probably the biggest reason. But that, to be honest, I don't know, other than that's kind of how Keb's designed all of them. The lower phase has the same thing. They've got
I
an
saw
open space.
that.
We plant trees along there, but for the
Yeah.
most part.
so there's no sidewalk there right now, but when you build this lot, there will be a sidewalk.
Yes.
So that sidewalk's not gonna be within the 50-foot right-of-way or whatever easement. Can we
Yeah, I
outside
think
that?
it is, actually. I believe it is.
So it's got
Well-
two, it's got a weird
Well, you're right, because I think
pie-shaped
it's,
slice in there.
I think the sidewalk is within the road right away, and then
Yeah.
there's an open space. It just
Yeah.
gives what it gives me as a developer and builder is a little space between where they have, the owner has their owned lot,
Yeah,
where I can put some screening and things, and normally I try to plant some trees along there.
okay, so if you're,
Because I have to be able to sell the lot too, so.
well, yeah, well, that's my other concern with this lot. I would like to see, since that's a corner lot, my thought is those corner lots should always be the biggest lots you've got, to give you a buffer from the street. It'd be easy to do here by taking 2 feet off the next 4 lots to the north, which are 60 feet wide, dropping back to 58, and give that 8 feet to lot 37.
Well, I understand your point, but these lots are developed or designed very specifically for houses that I've already built and that we've done in this other phase.
Oh,
So
okay.
what these have is either a 40-foot buildable
Mhm.
or a 50-foot buildable width.
Okay,
The 40-foot buildable space gives me enough width to do a house with a 2-car garage, and the 50-foot buildable gives me enough width to do a 3-car garage. And then along the cul-de-sacs, those were specifically designed to fit particular houses on them. So I've got them set up so that they actually know where the garages are
Okay.
going, how the
so you've
specific
got all the
houses.
houses here designed, footprint designed already then, pretty
Yes.
much.
I understand what you're saying. The other issue for me is those corner lots. You're right, it could have a little more space there. If you give them more space, they're gonna put more house there is what's essentially gonna happen.
True.
Now, if you said I want more space there for yard space,
Mhm.
I get that, but, those lots are less valuable generally than the other lots. So to put the biggest lot on the corner isn't
Yeah.
financially great for me.
So that open space you're talking about there, that's something maybe you would put a buffer of trees or something there
Yes.
that you would maintain, the owner wouldn't have to?
The association would maintain it eventually, because the open space becomes
Part of the
common
association,
area.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
So as of now, there is no association yet?
yes, there is.
There is?
Yes,
Okay.
there's a Meadowbrook West Homeowners Association. They became active this last year.
these people.
So they are now self-governing, and as the owner of some of the lots, I have, I go to their meetings and, you know, they ask me questions, obviously, because I have lots of knowledge from past stuff, from years and years, so.
Okay.
So we're working together on that, but yes, they are self-governing.
I'm gonna talk about Forest, I live in Meadowbrook.
Okay.
Just to be clear, Forest View, there's been conversation with the West folks about Forest View and the section of that
Yes.
being their responsibility. They need to help maintain that.
Yes.
And they basically have given us the finger.
Okay, well, I'd say there's two sides to that story. Now, I'm kind of outside of that conversation, I've not been technically involved in that. But I can tell you what I heard from the other side. What Meadowbrook West, my understanding is they got sent Meadowbrook a letter or vice versa, I'm not sure which.
Meadowbrook.
Let me go back a little bit. Forest View Drive,
That's this.
yep, that's Forest View Drive to that point right there. That, this section of Forest View is maintained by Meadowbrook. This section of Forest View to right here is maintained by the commercial parcels. So the portion we're talking about is from here to here. And that part, had we developed this all at once, it would have been just all in one thing and it wouldn't have been an issue. Where it came up is, I'm gonna give you my view. Meadowbrook wanted me, or us, the developers, it's now me, because there was three of us and I'm the guy left holding the bag now. So, they wanted me to maintain that, which is okay, and I agreed to do that, so we came up with an agreement. And until the time that it's turned over to Meadowbrook West, I maintained that road. So now that Meadowbrook West is involved, they have to share in that. So there's an agreement between the two that they will share the Forest View Drive maintenance. Now,
You and
sorry.
West.
When you say
Meadow-
between the two, who are the two?
between the two is be Meadowbrook West and Meadowbrook.
Okay,
So, because now that Meadowbrook West is self-governing, they own Forest View Drive as part of their open space, common area. And Meadowbrook has an easement to use that space. So, my understanding is that Meadowbrook I think Meadowbrook approached Meadowbrook West, I'm not sure which, and
They
wanted
did.
to talk about the maintenance of the road.
yes.
My understanding is that Meadowbrook West said, yes, that's okay, but we've only been here for, what, 3 or 4 years. You guys have been here since 1996. So your portion of the maintenance for the first repaving, if there's gonna be a repaving, all of Meadowbrook has been repaved at this point, mostly, except the 4th phase. They said that they want to counterweight it or weight it so that the residents who've been using it the longest pay the most, and then it would be by lot. So that's my understanding. Again, I have not been part of those conversations. And to my mind, that's fair. But again, that's not my conversation.
Can I say a couple things real quick?
Yeah.
And just so we're clear, Mark here realizes too that because he is living in it and there are these conversations going on, that, he may have a conflict here and is going to recuse himself from voting. But, so I just want you to know, as a developer, we're trying to keep everything above board here at the township. But in that doesn't dissuade, any conversation or discussion, he is able to bring unique information to this discussion, and we value that.
And I'm okay with that. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time and I've got nothing to hide. You know, as much transparency as possible is okay with me.
And then the second thing I just wanted to say is, and this is why, the township in 2016 did away with private roads is for these very reasons.
I understand that,
Because
'cause we were part of that conversation.
yeah, cause we end up as a municipality, these HOAs and their presidents and their boards end up coming to the board. And I don't know, Kate, if you've been there for one of those yet, but I know Jason, I think you were there for some of these where they'll come and they'll say, you know, we want you to go ahead and take this over. And the municipality says, we can barely afford the infrastructure we have, definitely not.
And there were discussions with the road commission about taking over these roads, but they won't take them.
Yeah, and that's something that maybe now with the with these discussions happening more at the road commission level now, because the county has been building out, and we're not the only community that has this, it might be worth revisiting, especially when this development is complete. Because I've seen that you guys have been building a lot of this to Clayton County road standards. So, there could be a path there, I guess I'm saying. I guess one of the things that I've heard from the planning commission tonight is that whole issue of maintenance is something that they would like to see, talked about in either the bylaws of this HOA as they're getting formed with the other one, or how you guys are gonna handle that issue.
There is an agreement. I can give you a copy of the agreement if you want.
Sure.
But there is an agreement between, I guess it would have been between myself and, but it was between Meadowbrook West and
Meadowbrook. Okay.
And that agreement was that the commercial areas would take care of the entrance up to the first berm line. And then when Meadowbrook West came online, that they would share that piece.
Does it talk at all in that agreement about like the prorating aspect that you said is kinda in
It just said that they would have to
discussions?
reach an agreement, I think.
Okay.
I don't remember if it has a specific.
I mean, personally, on the planning commission side, or, you know, representing how the township and the board in the past has viewed this, and Jason or Kate, correct me if I'm wrong or overstepping here, is we've always left it up to these bodies to determine their own destiny and self-govern, and whatever legal issues they have between themselves, one of the classic sayings in planning is, it's a civil matter.
And that's part of my point about if they combined into one community, then this issue would go away.
The Board of Meadowbrook, I think is, like you say, they changed 2 years ago, to be managed, is more open to that than they were prior. The board is completely different. Again, above board, my wife is on that board. And this is becoming very contentious.
And again, I talked to Janet, that's not your wife, is it?
Janet?
Is it Janet?
No. Schwarma?
No. Who's, I don't know, somebody said, that's where it came from, cause somebody sent me an email and asked me my opinion on it. That's where that came from, but I can't remember. It was somebody on the board.
See, I kinda compare this to how the county would look at this, because I'm in an association too, but our roads are now public, they weren't when I moved in, but anyway. The backside, they're looking at it. The county pretty much says, we will take over those roads after you bring them up to county standards. So, I'm looking at Meadowbrook, they're the only ones this road serviced until your self-development went in. So if I was in Meadowbrook West, I'd say, okay, we'll take over maintenance of that road after Meadowbrook brings it up to full standards.
That was my point, I think.
Yeah.
That's the point I think they were trying to make.
Yeah, that just kinda makes sense.
I would like to suggest though too, that, you know, we could talk a lot about how these HOAs should govern, for sure, and I think that maintenance of the road should be a part of this conversation, but I also wanna talk about what the planning commission's, for their benefit, what are you guys' thoughts about the layout? We talked a little bit about dimensional standards, he mentioned some of the ideas they had about draining. I just think it's important to get those thoughts out tonight, cause they're gonna have to work with the information that's given them tonight. And I don't want the conversation to be all about self-governing.
Good point, Miles, thank you.
Well, I think your discussion, you said why you put the cul-de-sac in, answered some of my questions. Looking at the plan, I thought the drainage problem from the north side is really a problem. But now you've explained it, it's probably gonna work out okay.
Yeah,
Cause I
that's
looked at
why,
the contours you had here, and I said, boy, that's a mess.
and it was one of those things, if you look at, in the older Meadowbrook subdivision on the Meadowbrook Drive, on the north side of that, there's some similar lots where they drain down right
Yeah.
along there, where it drains toward the road.
Yep.
Instead of draining down toward the backyard, drains toward the front yard, which is,
Yep.
is somewhat problematic. So that's what we were trying to solve there. But that's the reasoning behind it. But other than that, it would be similar houses that are in the other neighborhoods, or other streets, I guess you could say.
George, you had
So I
something
know
you
on
wanted to
some
say?
of our other PUDs, we talked about, dog stuff, we talked about parks and, like, you know, in Lansing, when they used to have neighborhoods, you had a neighborhood park or whatever. And then we also have, a lot, recently, we have a lighting ordinance. So I was kinda curious about that. I was gonna ask Miles, cause I couldn't really see anything there, but I'm sure it'll be kinda modern, I'm sure.
Well, there's nothing,
No.
nothing there that's specifically a park. There's an open space in the back, or in the center there. There's the sidewalk that loops all the way through. I don't know if you can see
Yeah.
between lots 54 and 72 there.
So is, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Tim.
go ahead.
So that center place, that's actually gonna be a low area that's gonna be moist too probably, but it doesn't, do you have
During-
act, do
I think
the
during rain
residents?
events probably, depends how.
So that's all open space, any of the residents could go there?
Yes.
Okay.
There's also a space down here, that is 5 acres of space that both communities can use. It actually belongs to Meadowbrook West.
So them
that's-
outside lots will be able to go through somehow and get to that inner,
This space here, you can see there's a basketball court on it,
yes,
Yeah.
where this person put it in, but we gave them permission to do it. There's an access here, there's an access through there, but it's not terribly.
Now, is
This
that
the access.
strip actually in Meridian Township, or did they get annexed into Bath?
That is actually in Meridian Township.
I looked at the plan, I said, what is this?
And that's why that basketball court was outside of our zoning.
Oh, okay.
But that's also why we didn't develop that, because it was a narrow piece.
Yeah.
Now, the last, I don't know what it is, 10 feet of those lots or something is in Meadowbrook, so it's all.
It's a little bit of a gray area though, and Beth has had some qualms with this parcel, and you can see Clayton County actually represents it on their parcel viewer here.
Yes.
So it's kind of,
I think that's just because it was part of the condominium.
so I see there's a gap, there's a couple gaps where you can get into that space.
This is the main access, this is where people actually go to get back to this.
I'm talking about the new development, the low area we were just looking at.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes.
So you have your two cul-de-sacs, I see
Yeah, there's
them
a space here,
spaces.
there's a space here, and then there's a sidewalk that runs through, so they could get to any of those areas from there.
I just wanted to make sure that was pointed out, thank you.
what about the point, and this is a good point, George, thanks for bringing that up. What about lighting? How do you guys, I haven't
There's a-
driven around this neighborhood at night.
Every other, phase we've done, there's been a lighting district
Okay.
created, so there are streetlights every, I don't know what it is, but there's a.
Since you guys have last done lighting, we have, and your lighting there already might be fantastic and screened and directionally lit down and pedestrian or vehicle scaled. But I can't speak to it, cause I can't, how do you guys do lighting?
I think Consumers Energy put them all in, so it's
Okay.
whatever they're, you know, they've got the little hats on them and I
So
couldn't tell you
those little
versus-
hats are, so that if it's Consumers Energy and it's the
Dark
lights
sky.
I'm thinking about, then they would be directional lighting and that would
Yeah.
meet dark sky compliance.
Cause we have new lighting ordinance.
That's not something that we planned for, it's just, I think we followed a requirement for whatever, I don't know if that was by the township or by Consumers Energy, but.
Consumers was ahead of us on their, lighting standards. So if it's consumer standards, it should meet our standards.
Yeah.
They'll probably look at that, won't they,
Yes,
They
will.
will, they
Yeah,
will.
They have for each phase.
agency, yeah.
And they'll probably install it with their new LEDs that can, the temperatures can be changed, so.
Cause they've done all the lighting and then, cause they put it in and then they bill us for it, is what ended up happening.
Yeah, then it becomes an assessment for all the property after that for maintenance, right?
Yeah, Beth will assess the lighting
The lighting
district,
district, yeah.
and then she will amend the lighting district or create a new lighting district if it's called for.
That's how it's gone in the past.
I have a construction question. Curb and gutter in here.
Yes,
Is that gonna be roll curb or 6-inch straight curb?
roll curb.
Yeah. I hate that. Just let you know. I hate roll curb.
I'm not a big fan, and I have a few people who take those curbs out and cut them out and put down to this road. The issue is, if you put curb all the way along there with the number of lots that are in there, you're cutting out awful lot of curb to put stuff in. That's the issue. But
Well, since you already know where the houses are gonna be, you pretty much know where the driveway's gonna be, you can do that when you put the curb in. Now, the reason I don't like roll curb is most of the maintenance, snow plowing especially, because the plows come in, they plow the first foot of sod or off the lawn. Because that plow doesn't stop at the curb, it rides up on the curb, it hits your lawn, oh, I'm on the road, I get back in here again.
right, it's a,
That's a problem, 'cause the street I live on has roll curb, and that's a big problem. Because they do that.
but that's the reasoning, I think, mostly for the rolled curbs. But
Yeah.
there's a private company that does all of the plowing in that neighborhood.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
we have the same thing, but they have the same problem the public does, they can't stay on the road. That's why I like the 6-inch curb, they hit that curb, they ride right along that curb and
Sure.
no problem. I suspect, however, from a construction standpoint, roll curb is less expensive than a 6-inch curb.
I don't actually know the answer to that.
Takes a little bit more material, not a lot, but you get that little bump on it. Yeah, I know where we are, we got roll curb, every driveway's cut down. I didn't say everyone, there's a couple of them aren't, but they're almost all cut down.
There might be a good reason for this, but one thing that we noticed, me and Bert were talking about earlier today, and Bert Gilligan, their zoning administrator,
I know Bert.
is, 67 and 68 here. Just because this is a main corridor through your neighborhood, so to say, we always try to attempt to keep as much driveway traffic off those as possible. Is there a reason that you're feeding those on, Forest View and not just orientating those to this drive here?
It has to do with views, and part of that came from, that's how it was laid out in the original plans,
Okay.
when Cabs did it.
Yeah, cause it looked like you had the space to directionally shift them either way.
So, well, it would only be lot 68, oh, 68 and
68 and
67,
70,
flip
yeah,
those around?
like flipping those and then getting the driveways off of this drive.
I guess it's technically possible probably, but it typically has to do with views. But I could look into that.
It was just a thought, there's good reasoning to not do it, it's not, we're not, I'm not even, this is the planning commission's conversation, it's just something I wanted to bring forward.
Sure.
That's a pretty good catch.
Right. It's just one of those, I mean, I've looked at that before, and I can't tell you I feel strongly about it, other than the fact that you've already got the other ones there, so, you kinda get that,
Yeah.
the
Continuity.
continuity along there, and you've got the sidewalks there, and,
The 61 and 62 are the other way, on
Right.
Rogers Way.
that's just kinda how it was laid out from the original plan, so I was following that, to be honest, I don't remember.
Just design the house on 68 to have a side load garage.
You could do that, and then that would at
Take care of
least
that
give you
problem.
one.
Right.
I would just imagine, and Mark, you know better than anyone, this is a 9 to 5 community.
Yeah.
Peak hours.
You know, I happen to really like living in the neighborhood, the walking, the sidewalks are, you know, the people are out walking and, doing things that I can, Forest View right now, even though it's not at the sidewalk, they use that space for the dogs, in particular, and, they look forward to getting sidewalk up there. Because for the people that's just the walk, it's a measured distance for them. But ACD has their,
Hoping that's on one of those
It's-
property corners, but.
no, actually,
an awful
it
big
looks
box.
like it's in 64, 65. It's right at the mouth,
Right
yeah.
out there.
Is that going to get relocated, or is that gonna be in somebody's front yard?
I don't know. I didn't realize when ACD put that in, it was gonna be that big of a box.
It's
There's
a
big
huge
boxes.
box.
So I don't know if they could do that underground, I don't really know what's in it. I mean, obviously, it's probably where they make connections to stuff. I
Yeah,
don't- I
that's
don't
all
know
it
enough about
is,
Does mean you probably have good internet though, so.
no, it doesn't mean that.
Well, you got, in Meadowbrook,
We got wow,
yeah, 'cause ACD, yeah, there's a long history of
yes,
that one. So
yeah, we'd love to see wow go away or get
they would do
options.
ACD if enough people agreed to hook in.
We've actually had that vote,
Reach out.
and they said no.
John, if it's okay, I could ask one more, just kind
Absolutely.
of question, just out of curiosity, we've always used your development, your neighborhood as a big indicator of, kind of the state of housing in the township, because there are so many units and it has built out over time. Obviously you guys are in the Hazlet School District, it's a desirable school district, and as Hazlet's ranking has gone up, I think that it has played a factor in land values, and Kate's actually gonna talk about that a little bit in his presentation tonight. But, can you talk, just to give all of us, myself included, a background on kind of where housing values are at in the township? Kind of what your houses were selling for in, 2008, when you maybe started, and kind of go over the years of where you're at now?
Well,
If that's okay, I don't know if
yeah,
that's
I
prying
can
too
give you
much.
kind of a general.
Yeah,
Just before 2008, they were high, in my mind.
Okay.
They were,
for the market at the
and
time.
they tanked to about as far down as they could go.
Okay,
And we were just, trying to hang on, trying to strip everything out of the houses to get them to be more like tract houses and meet up with those guys. And you could see that when a few of the houses that are built during that time. It slowly started coming back, and the values now are much higher than I thought they were gonna go. And that's not because I'm making more profits, that's because in 2021, we saw the cost of materials go up. A lot of materials went up 40-some%. That's a big,
have you seen that same increase in labor?
yeah, oh yeah. We usually get a price increase each year in the springtime from a lot of people. We were getting, you'd get a 25% increase. Think, wow, that's a big increase, but at least I can hold out until next year and we can make an adjustment. Cause I guarantee my prices for the customers. So I take that hit.
Yeah,
And then you'd get another one of 12%. Like, wait a minute, and this is 2 months later. And you get another one of 8%. You add them all up, and it's, okay, that's 38% that everything went up in materials in 1 year. But that was in 2021, 22, I guess it was 20, 21, 22, somewhere in there. But it was all mostly within 1 year. So I took a hit on a lot of those. Now, I figured it out, and it's mellowed out since then, but the values are, to be perfectly honest, I don't know how
What do
people
you
can afford
think-
them, but.
what do you think your average square footage for these 48 units is gonna be, and then what do you think the average price of these, just average out the
Well,
48, what's
to
this
tell you
average
what
square footage, what's
what I'm
average
building
price?
now, if you'd asked me to bring that in, I could have brought something in that actually had some numbers attached to it.
It's just generally speaking, we're not
but,
gonna
you
hold
know,
you to this.
For a ranch house, they're probably $180 to $200 a square foot. But, I've got one I just sold, I think that was 2,400 square feet, and it sold for, I should know that off the top of my head. I think it's 550.
So mid-fives.
Yeah, and most of the things are mid-fives. I've got one that's gonna come up for sale here shortly that's gonna be, I've got 3 specs in there right now, so those, but one of them's gonna be over 600.
So you're well into that upper middle class, upper class
Oh, yeah.
price point,
Yes.
where
And
maybe in the 2012, 2014 time period, you were more in that middle class price point.
I think
Probably,
it
but,
was.
yeah, it's,
Not through any fault or change of your own, I'm not
it's-
faulting you, but I'm just saying that's just how the
I'm just trying to
market
think
has
of the
moved.
people who are buying the houses. It's usually, I shouldn't say usually, but a fair number of them are MSU, in tech, like with Delta Dental, MSU or the state. Some of the hospitals, doctors,
Yeah,
but those are what I would call
that's
typical
always
buyers.
been kinda your customer base over the years, or has that changed?
It's probably always been mostly that, it's varied, but that's been probably our core. Just
Okay.
because of partly location, but the prices and the houses they're unique within Lansing. We generally build half of our houses in that neighborhood and half of them outside, that's historically been built. So we've always been a little higher than what I would call probably the generic houses in town. We're not a production builder. There used to be lots of little builders in Lansing, and now there's a few production builders and fewer number of small builders. So
Yeah.
it's a different market than it was 30 years ago,
Yeah.
a little bit.
Okay, I hope that wasn't prying too much, this is useful for me to know, just, we don't get too many home builders in here to talk
That's
about
okay.
the market.
But the issue for me, I've tried to build something more affordable, but for the basic structure, if I build a basic structure and start stripping stuff out of it, what you end up stripping out is the detail. And that's the part that sets me apart from somebody else. And so, if I could save somebody $20,000 and the house has no character, you know, I shot myself in the foot.
Sure.
So I've continued to be a smaller builder in that it's a little more expensive niche, but I think it's a better product.
Alright, I kinda sidebarred the whole conversation, anyway,
It was great.
if
That's
anybody
good
has.
information to have.
Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right.
Oh, I did have one question.
Go ahead, Ray.
You gonna have street trees on these streets?
Yes.
Good.
Now, just so you know, in the older part of Meadowbrook, we didn't have any requirements for trees. And most people planted trees, and some people didn't, and I hated those lots, especially because the houses are fairly close together. So what we did in this next phase, and we encouraged trees, so the board paid a third, and I agreed to pay a third, and whatever homeowners wanted to pay a third, we had a promotion, however you wanna say it, to put more trees in, and that worked really well.
Good.
But in Meadowbrook West, since I was writing a new set of bylaws, the bylaws are almost all exactly the same, except I put in, there's a requirement for 2 trees in every yard. So
good.
that is a requirement, for exactly the reason you're talking about.
I think that's great.
And these are like space appropriate trees, you can't just, throw an oak tree in there that's gonna overgrow the
I don't know that
space
I made
that
a
it's planted in.
requirement of what they are, but they have to be of a certain size, but.
Yeah.
But generally, the landscapers will put in, appropriate
Probably
trees.
what would be appropriate then.
Some of them, there's a street next to me that has river birch trees, as street trees. Those are not appropriate.
A lot of stuff.
Alright, so just, just to get back again, like how this will move forward, I'll reach out with a synopsis of, some of the thoughts that came out tonight, and then, some of the information I guess we'll need additionally to this, and then move forward with the agency review. Usually it takes us about 2 weeks to perform the agency review, and then, staff will compile all those into a final staff report, and then we'll get you, if you're ready and the planning commission's ready, I'll work with John to get you back on the agenda. And at that time, the planning commission at their pleasure can hear out the information and take a vote. Probably also get a public hearing in there.
Yep, we'll have to have one.
If anybody has any other questions for me along the way, happy to answer them, so. Alright,
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming.
are you guys having further discussion on this, or are you done with this?
We're done with this.
We're done.
If you want to stick around for any reason, I can. Okay.
We're gonna discuss housing values and related areas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, community profile presentation. You're on, sir.
Yeah, so, real quick if you don't, I asked Cade, he did, I'm gonna turn it over, I'm gonna try to talk as little as possible, I know I love talking, and it's a weakness of mine, but just real quick, so Cade gave a really good presentation, as a part of some of his work, and we worked with him, and he amended some of it, to create some data points that I don't think we've looked at before. The planning department just likes to give these, to the planning commission every once in a while, and Ryan's even requested some of them be sent up to the board before, cause you guys are policymakers and decision makers, and I want, everyone to have as much information as possible, so I think it's healthy. So yeah.
Alright, yeah, so, I originally compiled this information, for a class assignment, but some of the, I showed it to Miles and he thought some of the information might be pertinent to, for you guys to know, for the general trend for the community. So this is, data collected from the census, of Bath Township as well as Williamson Township and DeWitt Township and Clinton County, kind of comparing comparable townships as well as the county as a whole to how Bath is doing. So in the first section, demographics, I went over the population change. Bath Township has grown a lot, especially compared with the townships around it over the 20-year period. I should have specified all this data is between 2000 and 2020. Clinton County actually saw a decrease in this time, so I think it really shows the strength of Bath Township in comparison to the community it resides in. In the next section, oh yeah, what's up?
Are you looking for comments, questions, feedback?
Yeah, you know, yes,
Or,
we can do it while we're going.
I mean, are we comfortable with that?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
So I'll just say I'm a data nerd, so I have lots of questions and suggestions.
Yeah.
And all this is in the context of this is fabulous. So first I'll take that, and this is a great resource for both the planning commission and the board. So simple thing, articulating where your sources are. I know you said it verbally, but having that associated with the visualizations would be helpful. Clinton County, while you have it in a verbal statement, adding that maybe on a secondary y-axis to show that decline might be helpful.
Yeah, I didn't add it in originally in this graph because Clinton County would be so much higher than all the three townships I looked at, but I could see the use of seeing the slight decline compared to Bath Township's growth next to it.
So I think a combo chart would give you that tool to present that effectively.
Yeah.
I was just curious why you chose Williamstown Township. I guess I hadn't thought of them as that similar. I suppose there are some similarities, and they're not directly adjacent, but close.
Yeah,
I was just curious.
The reason I chose, so Bath is actually in an interesting position when I was crafting this assignment where it is much bigger than a lot of the surrounding charter townships, but is much, much smaller than trying to compare it to East Lansing. So it was kind of the best of what I had, and that's why I selected it.
Okay.
But I agree, it's not the best comparison. If I had a township that was closer in population or density, it would be more advantageous.
I think the problem with Williamstown Township is it's got the city of Williamston in it. That's where the population is.
Yes.
It's not in the township, because the township's way outside. There is no downtown Williamstown Township, I don't think.
But for his purposes of like population data with the census, the city is included in their population. I agree that, I think it's hard, just to defend you a little bit here, I think it's hard because Bath is a really unique place because of our sprawl capabilities with the municipalities we're adjacent to. I know I always feel small compared to Meridian Township, but then when we go to like these township conferences, I tell people like how many voting precincts we have, and their jaw hits the floor, cause they're like, oh my god, you're a city. So it's hard to compare.
So right here, I made a population pyramid that's just for 2020 within Bath Township. You can kind of see at the lower part, the very, very large student population that's within Bath. And then right above that student population doesn't stick around. But then when you go further up to the 40s and 50s, there's a really, really large working age population within Bath Township. So I guess something to consider is it would be great to have retention of some of the student population, but maybe that's not attainable. But also there's a large population that is probably going to be sticking with this community and a large tax base with the age demographic between 40 to 60 years old.
So, I mean, with that, I mean, I do think it's unattainable to retain college students at Michigan State University. But I wonder if there's some estimates that we could factor out from this population graph to accommodate, and maybe add a third color to those college age to represent that. Because you'd probably see much more consistency in retention of the population once you factor out those
I agree, so, but one thing that's weird, because we look at, this chart, by the way, in the planning industry is like, this is like our god.
I'm sorry.
Because it's kind of that saying like demographics are destiny for a community. There's another one that says geography is destiny as well, which I think is equally plays a big factor. If you have a beautiful river running through your municipality, it really helps. But there is something of note here. I agree that it's MSU. There's no way we're gonna like see some kind of rounded chart here. Like, so the healthiest way that you'll see these is they're this shape. Seeing anything outside of that shape is an anomaly, but seeing this much loss in these population and then filling back in here, I think you can make some inferences about why that is. I don't think we should ever be criticized for losing that soon, but we're losing at a rate that feels odd in that, you know, late 20s, early 30s. Like something's going on there.
As housing, I think.
I think it probably isn't.
You have two different student populations, you have undergraduates and graduates, so.
True.
I think that's a desirable situation. You want people to go out and have different experiences and bring back different knowledge and different.
That's true,
inputs.
what you risk though is a community stagnating and then this bubble of population we see here, which is our healthy tax base, just aging up and not leaving or doing anything and then no new blood coming in. And then you lose those highest earning years, the healthiest tax base years of your 40 to 55 range. If they just age up and then nothing comes in because of maybe housing, then that can put a community in a really bad spot where their demographics look like this, which is just annihilation
Right.
for our
That's
community.
true.
Straight out of college, you're not gonna be spending almost $500,000 on a house over in the
HDI building.
No,
HDI.
and the creation of starter homes just in this area, but really, I mean, anywhere in the US is just so subpar.
Right.
If you wanted to go down the pathway of extracting out MSU students, I can advise you as to a strategy on how to do that. You could do a request from the registrar for de-identified data on its students who have local addresses in Bath Charter
Oh, okay,
Township.
they have that geographic data. Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be useful for that. If I would,
Okay,
do this.
I've
They-
interrupted, I'm
they
so
have
sorry.
done to
Yeah, all good.
Street address and everything. Yeah.
Wow.
So, this next graph, shows the median age, within all the municipalities, that's supposed to be Clinton County, that's just an error. So Bath kind of fits into the slow aging population within this area of Michigan. And that could be problematic eventually, if it ages to a point where we no longer have that like working tax base within this community. And could be a liability in the end, so, I don't think it's of, I guess, particular concern at this current moment, but let's say this trend continues 10 years, 20 years down the line, it could become more of an issue. So yeah, this is, the next statistic, I thought this was especially, interesting. The median home value within Bath used to be quite low compared to the nearby municipalities. And eventually has risen to be the highest within nearby municipalities and compared to Clinton County. So it's hard to know exactly what goes into, you know, we heard just a second ago how materials are a higher price, labor's a higher price. But considering the amount of growth that has happened, it's also the area to consider has become more valuable over time. Which is an asset, but it is a risk because people of a lower socioeconomic status won't be able to afford a lot of the homes being built within Bath Township.
Is this because the houses are just newer?
That plays a factor, I mean, we have a
Versus
lot of new
DeWitt, which
housing
is pretty
construction
much-
come online.
Was built 20 to 30 years ago?
But then you also gotta think you have wild card factors like Costco's pretty close, and people like to live near a Costco. And so that you have spin-off housing value creation there.
Who likes to live next to Costco?
Well, no one likes to live next to a Costco, but people like to live within
Close
10
to a
minutes of
Costco.
a
It's changed
Costco.
my life.
So with this, I really like this in terms of median home value. I'd probably make the metrics with little dollar signs to make it a little bit readable. But the thing that would have been really nice to see with this is, housing, metrics on housing stock, or better yet, tax revenue. As for us to think about, what is the tax revenue coming into the township, for us to think about what is, and maybe that could be further broken down into a disposable tax revenue in terms of what can be allocated towards public good versus not.
Tax revenue would be an interesting.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be a great
Yeah.
statistic to add to kind of give more
It's
insight
interesting
about the home values.
To this thing here, the property values in every township and county either stayed the same or went up. Except Williamstown Township went way down. Now, why was that? It doesn't
it's
affect us, but it's just weird.
My thinking around that, and I haven't looked into this is just what since it's such a small community, maybe the homes that were there were quite large and expensive, and maybe more housing was built to accommodate more people over
I
time.
would say
Could be.
housing stock aged and new
Yeah.
housing didn't come in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or the assessor did something different from our assessor.
yeah. I always keep
That
going
could
up.
be too, you don't know, that'd be like a wild card factor, yeah.
I hope my sale price goes up as much as the assessment did this year.
Home ownership in Bath is definitely interesting because we have a much larger renter base within Bath Township. Something to definitely consider is our proximity to Michigan State University and how there is quite a bit of student housing here. But I think it is important to keep in mind that if this trend continues, having policies surrounding renter base apartments will be important. And it might also be contributed to the price of the homes within Bath Township currently and what's being built. So keeping that in mind when creating housing policy and approving housing developments could be important towards the development of Bath.
So to put the last two graphs together, housing prices are increasing in Bath not exponentially, but quite a bit.
Yeah.
And associated with that is homeownership is going down.
Yes. Yup.
And another point is, we've had a lot of apartments come online in the last 20 years too, so that's gonna weigh that demographic ownership down as well. That, to just reiterate, again, I know I'm cutting in again, sorry kid. Our main point here is, we don't have a lot of good renting policies at the municipal level, and I know it's something the planning commission and board have talked about. And, we don't have much in that realm, so it's just, as those trends continue, those are policies we're gonna wanna consider. I know there was even a very big public, issue we had with, remind me the name.
Chandler Crossing.
Chandler Crossing, and then we had to step in as this whole thing, and we didn't have as many tools in our toolkit as East Lansing did just across the street.
Okay, so now on to the education section. This is all from 2020. Bath Township does quite well with how educated the populace is. The darker blue section being graduate degrees and the green section being bachelor's degree. If you kind of combine that in your mind, it does fairly well compared to nearby townships. I'm certain the proximity to Michigan State, having graduates, living here and going to school at Michigan State helps with that. And I'll go on to the next section real quick just to combine it. The amount of bachelors within Bath has increased over time faster or higher than the surrounding townships and Clinton County. So if these trends continue and if the education rate remains quite high, we could support some high-skilled labor and could have developments within Bath even that employ high-skilled labor. And hopefully this would help over, the tax base as well, having an educated populace. And then, cool, so yeah, I looked at, so the first three school districts are the school districts that encompass all of Bath Township. And then the last three are kind of the highest or the most common school districts within the other communities that I looked at. And so Hazlet does amazingly well, it wins a bunch of awards within its schools. But Bath Community Schools and Langsberg fall kind of behind nearby areas.
Can I say real quick, just for the audience, cause I
Yeah.
know we have a teacher in the room too, and how we weighed our data here to
Yes.
get this graph, cause that's important. So, and you'll talk more about that individually, but, what we did here to get kind of just an overall ranking and put it on a chart, we didn't break it down by municipality, because school districts bleed into different municipalities, so these are just the school districts themselves. And then we took elementary, middle, and high school, and we just averaged the three together, on My School Data, which is the state's website for tracking school data. To Jason's point, maybe we should have our sources here, and then that would've helped in that point.
Yes, definitely.
But, yeah, so go ahead.
I don't
Sorry.
think you can average percentile rings.
Yeah, so it definitely, it's tricky, cause some of those schools are gonna have a much higher population, so averaging it, kinda.
So, I mean, so I spent some time in the My School data set, cause one of the things I was wondering about, cause I looked at this data on behalf of our county commissioner. So Bath is surprisingly diverse in its, student population, and I don't know if these percentile ranks really take into consideration student diversity. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a while since I've dabbled in CEPI data, but it's, I think it's general student performance on standardized tests. I mean, is that?
I think so.
Typically, I would think so.
So within My School Data, they've got like a school index or an overall school index. And it allows you to dig deeper into a bunch of different other metrics. Inclusive of graduation rates, some metric related to school quality, student success, English learner participation, blah, blah, blah. I wonder if there might be other metrics, because when I looked at this, it's called a components overview, and I can hand this over to you. And just looking at the high school data, and I think it might be cleaner to just look at high school data, because that's what's most proximal to
The next phase of.
the next phase of life.
And high school did much better, by the
Yes.
way, which he's gonna get into.
So, I mean, when you look at that, Bath isn't actually the lowest.
No,
It's, we're at whatever the 83 score is. And again, I didn't take that close a look to, go into the
Also,
intro.
the high school data is much more standardized. They use the same test, where in elementary schools, they don't necessarily grade by grade. So you get probably a better comparable metric just with the high school to high school data.
Kate was gonna go into it, and that's why I wanted to preface of like, we know this wasn't perfect, we just wanted to get a graph for you guys.
So, if I recall the high school from the, and we can, maybe this wasn't the best metric to only look at, I was just doing a very, very top-down generalized view of, the school district performance, but I think the high school was in the 70s, and elementary was in the 50s, and middle school was a little bit above elementary school, if memory serves, but, so if you just take into account high school, I think it's pretty comparable in the nearby areas. I think mentioning elementary, middle school might be worth it, cause maybe high school can be, succeed better with higher metrics on those. But if I were to redo this graph, I would probably flesh it out so you can particularly look at high school and see the differences between lower education and higher education. For the point of comparing the school districts, I thought it was easier to do this, just because of how many schools there are within these, all these school districts combined.
It's hard too, because if we were to do like every high school in the state of Michigan, you'd almost remove Hazlet as an outlier to the data, because they just score so high.
Well, and you could look at the resources available to those, schools. I do think it's worthwhile, because we are Bath Township and we're bringing data to bear on Bath schools, that we're sensitive about this process. And if we find a metric that is easy but portrays the schools in not a positive light, because it underrepresents the district in terms of its resources, its diversity, that's a disservice to the school district and to the, and to those of us who have gone to, attended Bath schools. I just think this is something that's
I think
worthy
there's a-
of being a little bit more careful about in terms of how we present the data.
So when I was working for the data, center at University of Michigan, we did very comprehensive data, analysis of the Flint school districts. And, that was a tough one to do, and we presented to a body of educators that were very mad at us.
I worked with many of those folks, I bet.
So, I think that it is hard, and I think there are a lot of challenges in education. I think it's not gonna be a perfect we're never gonna get a perfect representation, especially for some of the things you're talking about, which is like resources. Like, how do you create a quantitative, I'm sure people have done so.
My school data is replete with these.
Yeah.
And so I think just exploring, talking to Kate, talking to myself about, you know, what might be some more nuanced composite metrics, again, will serve the township better than presenting, you know, this kind of raw level of data.
Yeah.
But it's great.
Yeah, no, it's fine, I'm not, no more to say.
Yeah.
Alright,
So yeah, this is the labor force, it kinda fits what you would think considering, the population growth within Bath. But Bath's labor force is growing at a very, very high rate, higher than the surrounding townships. Which is also nice to think about considering it's within Clinton County and, that labor force, I don't have it here actually, so I won't make any assumptions, but considering the population degrowth, it is probably, at the very least at a standstill.
Question about this.
Yes.
I mean, looking between 2010 and 2020, just by my estimation, because I'm not looking at the actual values, there's like a 152% increase in the labor force, and that seems implausible. As if there might be an artifact of definition or something within the data. I mean, you do see within the median age over time that there was a dip between 2010, and that did increase 2010 to 2020.
Yes.
Well, how do you define labor force? If this includes all the 19 to 23-year-old MSU students as part of the labor force, then I think that
Oh,
probably.
alright, I should have, add
Explain
that in,
that.
it's, it's 24 years and above for this data. So that was my attempt to try to get out, or to not include college students within it. Obviously, that's not, going to be exactly correct, but, oh wait, no, actually, sorry, I think I'm misremembering, which statistic I did that for. I think I did that for the bachelor's education, that's my
The
mistake.
US Census defines labor force as people participate, so what, this is pulled from the census. They define, labor force as people participating in the labor force, so it's not just a age breakdown, but
Yeah.
let's
So
say
it could
there's a
be-
35-year-old that's unemployed but hasn't sought a job in over a year, they wouldn't be in this metric.
So could it be a 16-year-old who works at the
It
McDonald's?
could be,
In
yes.
Bath Township, okay,
Yep,
And when
if they're
was,
participating in the labor force, they're counted.
okay.
so, what was the timing of the census in 2020, and was it during the pandemic that this was measured? Because at least within student populations, there was a dramatic increase in the number of students who did both work and school at
It
the
was
same
during,
time.
I mean, yeah, it's during 2020 that was counted,
Yeah,
2020 census, the
So it's-
decennial census.
Okay.
probably during the, they were collecting it during the pandemic.
Yeah,
that
so
might
it was a weird
explain
year
that.
for a census.
Yeah,
And I think the census has realized that was a weird year for a census, cause they didn't, remember, we were talking about all this during the comp plan, they didn't release the 2020 data until 2022. When like by statute, they were supposed to have it in like the first quarter of 21.
Yeah.
Well, you can look at, what about 2010? Why is it so low there? Why did it drop from,
Probably the recession,
Recession.
no one was working.
So much unemployment, I mean, unemployment, especially in these metro areas, went, north of 10%.
except to a township?
They might have been insulated.
Maybe every DeWitt Township works for the state, maybe that's what happened.
Could have been, I mean, they could have been in that white collar sector that was insulated, Bath was probably more in the blue collar and trade sector, which got absolutely
Auto
decimated.
industry,
Absolutely decimated,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, I would assume that DeWitt is more white collar and Bath is more blue collar. Just a judgment, could be totally wrong.
You gotta go back to the pie charts.
Yeah.
And then this was, the last, statistic that I gathered, the mean income. So the mean income within Bath Township, has grown a considerable amount. And, there's almost doubled within the last 20 years, which is definitely good, and I think it kind of fits in with a bunch of the other metrics that I mentioned, education and medium home value and things of that sort. Williamstown still has the highest income, but if trends continue, I would not be shocked if Bath Township outperforms that 10, 20 years down the line.
This is household income?
No, I don't believe it is
No, I think it's
household.
household income.
Oh, it is household?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry, my bad.
Can't be individuals.
No.
I wonder what median income would look like.
My favorite filter to do this through, and we didn't have the time to do it, but was put it in spending power over time. So what is your real dollar spending power? Cause even though the actual real dollar numbers could be higher over time, the actual spending power of residents could have gone down.
Yep.
I'm a data nerd too, Jason knows that, so there's all kinds of stuff I like to do with it. It's
So,
not time.
and, the conclusion I have here, Bath Township sees a lot of growth, especially compared to nearby townships, comparable townships. Bath Township's educational attainment is high, but, some of the school districts could be improved, as, we mentioned, we had some debate over that, so, maybe not as bad as my graph portrayed here. The rise of home values, with also in coupled with the rise of the renting populations, could be a sign that Bath Township is in need of renting policy and continuing developments of rentable areas. Bath Township has a large workforce, but it is aging, which is, an asset right now, but could eventually be an issue if the population overall continues to age. Yeah.
So I think this is absolutely wonderful, and I would encourage more of this. I do think this is really helpful for us in, our planning and our thinking. There's some things that were discussed here that, I think relate to this housing development, and especially related to affordable housing. I think in the future, I'm not suggesting that this is a deficit, but, the more that we can do forecasting of what our community will look like in 10 and 20 years, that will, especially for a planning commission, will be incredibly helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought this was really great. When I was reading through it this afternoon, a lot of it surprised me. It was really good to take a look at this data, because much of it I would not have predicted. I grew up in Bath Township and then moved away and then have now moved back, and sometimes in my mind, it's still the Bath Township of my childhood, which is much different, as you can see.
You're in that demographic shift.
Yeah, right. So
Moving away and coming back.
yeah, exactly.
Late
So
30s,
that
40s.
was very interesting to give me a more realistic perspective on the numbers than probably what some of my assumptions would be.
I always think it's interesting because me and my planning friends will get together and we'll just guess random statistics about municipalities to see if our, cause we're nerds and we don't have lives. And I'll always use Bath Township, how many people you think live here, and I'll show them a map of it, they're 5,000. You say 13,000, it's way off. Okay. Just caveat too, I think you guys are right, we're a little bit outside our element on the My School data, so I think both of us as analysts probably have something to learn there. And I think in the future, I wanna know more about school districts, and I think school districts are an important part of economic development. And so I wanna bring that data point in more, so maybe as we try to do that, we should reach out to people in that data space and kind of fine tune our, methods. So I just wanna caveat that, so I don't get, an angry phone call from a teacher tomorrow that's watching this on YouTube.
I'm not a geek, but I enjoyed it.
A road geek, though.
Next topic.
You're up.
Anything else?
Yeah, no, we're good.
I'm sorry, I was reading the fees, got distracted. You want to cover the fee schedule, Miles?
Yeah, so, I've been trying to keep our fee schedule more up to date and constantly updating it as market forces, have changed and our costs have gone up. The main impetus for us to bring the fee schedule back tonight before the planning commission, which was at the suggestion of the superintendent. By statute, this could go right to the board and, there's no need, but the superintendent felt it was important for the planning commission to give it a blessing before it goes to the board.
Nice.
Which obviously I support. The impetus for us to bring it here was the escrow amounts that we take on file from developers, so we recently obviously had the Norm Fastener development come on, you know, or it's going through the review process and taking in $1,500 for the escrow account with a cap of $3,500 was like wildly under what our review costs have been. So we're looking to amend that to create a cap for at least, we don't anticipate in the coming future something of that scale to ever really come to Bath. But just because some of these industrial reviews may cost us more money, especially where infrastructure reviews involved, we wanna raise that cap to $10,000. Now, obviously, the developer's still on the hook to pay it, but then it puts us in a weird, and the treasurer really, in a weird situation where she's like doing a check request to said developer weekly. Instead of just having an easy account for them to pull and reimburse themselves from.
Can you show me that line item up there?
Yeah, it's actually this. So we're on taking an initial payment of $2,000 and raise a cap to $10,000.
Yeah, that's kind of important. Can I ask a question not related to that?
Yeah,
Your rezoning fee, what's the 5? Why does it go from 3 to 5?
Where
Like
we at?
500 an additional acre, it seems like a lot.
did we raise that?
I don't know if it is or not.
I
it just
don't remember
seems-
changing the acre.
Let me see your computer.
If that, if
I
that
was
was
just
changed,
curious.
I think that was an, cause we were just supposed to change the text amendment and the escrow amount.
I'll see if it's a
There's an
mistake.
extra zero there. In alignment with the other $50 additional acre fees.
Okay,
Hold on,
Yeah, I might have.
but that's for
I might have
rezoning.
actually made a typo. Let's look.
we'll see.
You gotta really want it rezoned.
It's
$50.
50
Yeah, it's supposed to be
for special
50.
Yeah,
use.
that's a typo, that's my mistake.
But if the logic there is that there's an initial fee and then additional acreage,
Right.
it's an additional $50.
Right, I understand that, it just seemed
No,
excessive.
good catch, our bad.
Oh, so
Totally
it
our
should be
bad.
50?
Suppose it should be 50. Yeah, just pulling it up on our internal copy.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a big packet, there's a lot of stuff going into it.
No, I-
you know,
Everybody makes
not to make
mistakes.
That's
excuses,
wonderful.
But hopefully we would've caught that when we.
You caught it, like
bring
right now,
back.
you guys took care of it right away, I'm impressed, thank you.
So the text amendment, there's a per acre fee, is that just straight, or should there be an each additional acre fee?
Or the text amendment or the rezoning. So the
Well,
rezoning, I like a per acre fee. For text amendment, we're just setting the fee at $300, which is up 50 from what we had it. And that's only because like the last text amendment we did was the
Oh,
private
per
roads.
article fee, sorry,
Per
I
article, yeah.
misread it.
And we only were amending one article in that, but the taxpayer had to subsidize that text amendment request because we definitely went over $250 in my time alone spent on it.
Oh, yeah.
So we just wanna, now most text amendment fees we get in are like, there's even one that an applicant is thinking about submitting now, they wanna change 2 words. So most aren't really that much to do, but the
Yeah.
last 2 that we had, which was the wind one, you'll remember that from the board,
Yep.
and this drive one, they were labor intensive. I mean,
Oh,
we
yeah,
definitely got
it was
north of
labor.
250.
Yeah,
So we just wanna up that by $50 to help just cover some of our costs.
yeah.
And that's why we're bringing this back every so often, cause we have to see what costs we incur and if this actually works in the real world. And I never wanna be in a situation where the Bath Township taxpayer is subsidizing developments.
Right, is this, I mean, in line with what other townships
Yeah.
charge?
Other than our
no idea.
typo, yes, we compare against other, sorry again, we compare against other municipalities to see if we're wildly different. And when I first got here, we were wildly under what everyone around us was, and
Well,
that's,
that's because we have,
and we've tried to work with the clerk's office and Brenda to help them bring up some of their fee schedules, cause like right now, we have people from the city of Flint coming to Bath to bury people, cause our or our funeral,
Cemetery.
our cemetery is so low compared to just everyone
Yeah.
on the 69 corridor.
Miles, under special use permit, home business, it says $50. And then over, under the PUD, it says home business $600 plus $15 per lot. Is there a mistake or?
Let me see, yeah, probably. Did we shift, dude?
Top of the second page.
Yeah, I think the column is just
Top
out
of
of
the
line.
backside.
You're right, you're right.
I think the column's just out of alignment, maybe.
I bet it got shifted. This is actually a really hard document to do because of how it's been formatted in the past, and we're thinking about just redoing it.
Start fresh.
Looks
Well,
like you almost got it though, so.
Might be nice to do it before we submit it to the board, though.
Yeah, but which one are we looking at here?
Where, under Plan Unit Development on the back side, it says preliminary site plan, final home business, $600 plus.
Oh, no, it's
$50
just
per lot.
shifted. Everything, shift everything up one.
I
So-
would just make it a spreadsheet instead of
I'd like it, we
Document.
could go with the spreadsheet. I like that idea, but yeah, no, you can see it shifted, so what we have is preliminary site plan is
Okay.
300, final site plan is 600, home
Gotcha.
business is 50.
Gotcha,
And
okay.
that 50 is called for, by the way, if we wanted to change that 50, we'd have to also go in and change it in our ordinance that
Yep.
we develop for home business.
Yep,
Which we agreed on when we talked about that
Yeah, we
before.
were trying to lower the barriers to people doing a home business SUP.
Right.
Yep, you didn't make a mistake, they're just all shifted down. A little bit that too is we type this up in Word and then I go to save as a PDF, shifts.
now it says $50 site plan inspection, sometimes we do numerous site plan inspections, are you,
Yeah, so
Each
that's
one?
a cost that we charge the developer when we're going out and physically in the field doing inspections. If we go out and we do a site plan inspection and we look for trees and bushes and they're all there, well then we're done, one charge of $50. If we have to make additional inspections, then we're charging additional inspection fees of
So
$50.
maybe that can be clarified, with in parentheses, per inspection.
It could be, yeah.
yeah,
Could be.
let's do that.
And that's standard practice, like even the building department,
Oh,
they
yeah.
go out and look at a deck's footings, and the footings are all good to go, then it's one inspection fee, if we gotta come out, it's a re-inspection fee.
Right. Let's clarify that.
That'd be
For
great, that's a
inspection,
good point.
thank you.
I think if it's okay with you guys, we will bring this back in the form of a spreadsheet, cause I think we're getting to the point where we are itemizing so many of these fees, a spreadsheet could be called for. Cause we're working with the document as it was when we first came online here, but as we've tried to itemize and modernize, this document was a one-pager when I first got here.
The ship of Theseus.
Still pretty clean though.
Yeah, we're trying, but I think to everyone's point, I think it can be cleaned up. But, okay, so our general sense though is we like the escrow, we like the text amendment going up $50.
Yep.
I think those were the only two major changes that we intended to make.
Yeah.
I don't think anything else went up by almost any dollar amount at all, there might have been two other, I think signage, we took up $50.
I think so, yes.
Develop this as a spreadsheet. I personally would make the dollar values formulas and set the formula to whatever that amount times 1, so that if you wanna do a cost inflation increase, you can put that,
Oh, down
value
the
in it,
line.
and it will,
Yeah, it's a good call. I like that. And we'll just have to work out if we go on a spreadsheet, like with the marijuana stuff, some of these caveats that we put in for legal reasons, which aren't as important now that the marijuana industry is kind of, we have one established and I don't think in the near term we'll be doing a second license, but that's a board call.
Attachment.
Yeah. Well, some of those fees are established by the state, aren't they?
Yeah, yep, we have a $5,000 cap, as every municipality does, but, obviously, every municipality just happened to put the cost at $5,000. But from the legal fees we incurred and just making the, ordinance itself, will probably take us 3 years of fees just to pay that back.
Oh, yeah.
But this will be the first year that we'll see tax revenue from marijuana, so I'm interested to see what that number will look like.
Right. It's gonna be interesting to see how many people will wanna renew their license too.
Yeah, well, so far, our applicant has renewed their license.
Oh, all three of them?
They did cut out the grow license, they didn't
Okay.
renew their grow license, cause the grow market, if you guys haven't been following with marijuana, has been absolutely decimated.
Yep,
It's
sure
totally
has.
oversaturated, bunch of companies liquidated and consolidated. A lot of people, just a little tidbit, I guess here, are likening it though to like the post, 1930s prohibition era, where after, liquor became legal again, there were like all these small batch breweries that are, distilleries that came out and then have consolidated over time.
But they're back.
Yeah, we are headed back in that direction.
Well, Michigan has done a good job, again, like side note, of deregulating a lot of that, so you do have places like American Fifth now that are thriving, and if you haven't been there, it's a pretty cool spot, you should check it out. That's all we got, John, though, on the fee schedule, we'll itemize it, make a spreadsheet, I like that idea, thank you, and bring it back.
Okay, you wanna bring that back to the planning commission then?
If the planning commission will let us bring it back, we would like to bring it back.
Well, sure. I don't think anybody's gonna object, are they? Any objections?
Well,
All right.
I still have it.
You have a objection?
No, I say the ayes still have.
Oh, okay, the I still have it.
no, we appreciate, having,
Yeah.
eyes on it, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. You got any report for us, Miles?
Yeah, I'll quickly, I know we're getting, it's 8:20 some, so I'll be quick. Webster Road update, I just wanted to let everyone know that we are encountering some, stuff going on with, securing easements, which, you know, we were talking a lot about non-motorized plan today and this vision, and they practically, you know, when we're trying to establish these, we need easements with property owners, and we're trying to secure all those. We got a couple last minute ones that we're flushing out still, we've had to amend some plans and some routes. Right now, it looks like the bulk of construction, it will probably happen more in July, June, period. So, but as we get info on that, staff, with the road commission and staff, will push that out to the board, the Safe Routes to School, the schools, and all of our other partnering agencies, the public, Facebook, so everyone knows what's going on. What we don't wanna do is like take a guess now, and like, we think it's gonna be these dates and people plan for it and then we're wrong.
Great.
Planning department updates, so, I just wanted to let you guys know that we are getting into going after a couple grants here soon, so Mishta has a planning grant that's more, it's been geared towards, helping communities redo their master plan to incentivize housing. We're gonna work that angle, truthfully so, to help them fund what will hopefully be some of our master plan and comprehensive plan updates in 2025, 2026. The grant's been fairly low competitive, so we feel confident, I guess, about getting some dollars allotted to help us, that way the community doesn't have to bear the full cost of our planning efforts. And then we're also going after, and we're keeping eyes on it now, cause we're not in the, application period yet, and I don't know exactly when it's gonna be, but I know it's coming soon. The SF4A grant that the Williams and Works staff talked about, earlier, and like I kinda alluded to earlier, we could go in on our own with it, but right now, we're thinking our best strategy is to work with the Clinton County Road Commission and go in with them together, so we have a stronger representation. Again, that's been a pretty low competition grant, most municipalities and counties that have gone for it have received it, at least for the planning side of it. Once you have a safety plan in place, as I was stated tonight, then you can go after the project dollars to implement that safety plan, those have been more competitive. But I don't see a downside in applying for the, grant to do safety planning, Cause even if we aren't able to secure the implementation dollars, it's still something we could use for DNR grants and just general ideas to think about how to improve safety in the community. It's something we have worked with the road commission to even thought about, I know in our Chandler corridor discussions, there's been a lot of talk about what we could do north of State Road, but right now we're limited dollar-wise to working State Road and south. And so that would be a good way to kind of piggyback on that project and continue that effort north. So I just wanted to let you guys know, that's not something the planning commission or board would see normally that staff's working on, but it's time consuming, it's something we're working on. And that's all I got.
Okay. Let's do some commissioner comments. Kate,
Do you want me to give you my board report?
if you'd like to, that would be
Okay,
great.
sure. I think, Board of Trustees meeting in February, so I don't think, I missed one planning commission meeting and then we didn't have one because of the election.
Right.
I did bring to them, our discussion of signs and signage around the community and the feeling of the planning commission that that was a need. And I think the Board of Trustees agreed with that sentiment, and the thought was that it was going to be worked into the staff projects, and I don't know if that falls on your shoulders, but I did share that that was something that the planning commission seemed to feel pretty strongly about as a need in the community. I don't know if you have seen, but there are 3 special meetings planned coming up in the next couple of months. I believe on April 1st, we're gonna talk about Norm Fasteners, and that's gonna be, and you probably got an email inviting you to come to that, so you're aware of that. We're also going to have one to talk about the senior center. I think that one's gonna be up first. And then, one for the Park Lake Trail, I believe that's in May. So those I would expect would have high, interest with the community, especially, perhaps with the more open format, other than just maybe the typical limit of public comment. So, those are coming up. I've been part of a group on behalf of the township that is implementing broadband service updates as part of the bipartisan federal infrastructure grant. The state of Michigan got billions of dollars to bring our internet access basically up to 100% is the goal. The first phase of the process is creating a map of each internet location, so basically house, business, school, public facility, to map out what its internet service is. They set some minimum standards, and any place that is unserved or underserved gets coded yellow or red on that map, and then gets targeted with funding to bring them up to full service. So just last week, that map was finally released, and so anybody can go in and check out their location. And the township, on behalf of its residents, can initiate a challenge to that map. So the data on the map is provided by the internet service providers. So WOW is providing the information that, yes, we serve them, we offer the level that meets the requirement. So townships can challenge that, but as well, the Michigan Internet Network called Merit, they have developed a way that individual residents can challenge their own individual rating as well. And they're just at the process of beginning that later this month. So I'm hopeful that the township will be able to roll out sort of an information campaign on Facebook and perhaps on the website, I'm not sure, that will walk residents through. I know there's some tutorial videos that will walk them through how they could go through the challenge process at their own home. Basically, you're gonna kind of go to the Merit Network, and they are testing your internet behind the scenes to verify whether or not what the internet service provider has reported is accurate or not. So if you're reported as unserved or underserved, then you're probably gonna be able to get some access. If you're flagged as green, which is served, and you don't feel that's accurate, then this would be an opportunity to go in and challenge that.
Is this wired only, or is
This
this?
is
in-
wired only.
So
Yep.
if you have no wired
So if,
internet
say
access-
Starlink,
Yeah.
that does not count. And on the map, there are filters. So when you go into the map, it does have all options. My house, for example, when I put all options in, yes, I'm served. But when I clicked specifically wired and then like the 100 down and 20 up, which is the standard, then I'm red. I am unserved. So, yes.
Does that mean, never mind. Where's the map available?
Online, we will post, I've been reluctant, I think we've been reluctant to send it out because the challenge
Okay.
process isn't opening till a couple, 10 days or so from now.
You'll let
And
us know.
it'll all come out hopefully at the same time.
Okay.
What was it? Well then, after this window of challenging, which is I think just 30 days, then the internet service providers have also a small window to reverse challenge. And then once that's done, within the year, the map gets finalized, and then any place that's red, they're basically gonna open up to bids and say, all right, who wants to bid to bring internet to these sites? And then the billions of dollars will pay to make that happen within 4 years. So that's a long window, but I personally have lived 8 years without any good internet access, so 4 years doesn't seem that bad. And I honestly kind of suspect in our area, we would be on the earlier end of that 4 years, just given our proximity to other infrastructure and internet companies in the area.
So as part of this process, I mean, so there's been some cycles of this type of process. Is the county still working on organizing a cohesive plan for the county?
They are, it's kind of getting rolled into it, and when you go to the map, it does have a funding filter that you can put on, like the Robin Grant color codes zones as well. Of course, we're not in Bath Township, any of that. But I think that they are rolling these processes together, which seems wise to me, as a way of not only flagging where do we need internet, but how is the funding gonna be allocated for it? And if there isn't already some sort of funding, then that's where this other newer money is gonna come from.
So one of the things that I think we as a township felt challenged by was how the county prioritized Bath Township within, you know, where they put their efforts in terms of writing grants. And I don't know if that's something that you feel more confident in now, or?
I do, it seems to me that this is a statewide project. It's a statewide initiative, and the money was awarded to the state of Michigan to basically get us up to 100%. And so that happened after all of these other things were already starting. So I think they're trying to work on that all together, but I think this is a bigger project than those individual smaller ones.
So all the wired internet suppliers are in this study then?
Yes.
It's not just WOW?
No, it's everybody. It's everybody. And when you go to the map, it will tell you who your possible service providers are listed as. I, for example, had 0.
What if I have
So
two?
this is a topic near and dear to my heart after living just, I don't know, 2 miles from here, and I don't have any good internet at my house. So I'm excited that something is moving forward, and I'm feeling positive about it, and I hope it goes as smoothly as they're making it sound like it will, but you never know. And then I was gonna talk about the Webster Road project, but it sounded like Miles has kept you updated on that, so
Good.
that was it.
George, you got anything?
No, as usual, I thank everybody behind the scenes that make this stuff happen, and the nice reports we've got, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Appreciate all those that sit in that office and work.
There's a lot of behind-the-scenes work goes on, that's for sure.
Just very thankful.
I want to remind everybody to kind of put that on your list, the Norm Fastener thing. I don't know if you saw the, yeah, the invite. And if you have any comments or questions that you wanted to address, Ryan asked me if we would submit them in writing ahead of time. So I don't know, we've already established a lot of criteria for that project, so I don't know. I don't think we can put any new ones on at this point anyhow, but I think there's liable to be some discussion about PFAS chemical in the use of that facility, so.
So maybe one point of clarification, what is our role in that meeting? Because it wasn't quite clear if we were there to support and answer questions as part of the rigmarole of the township, or if we were there as community members.
You know, in the discussion I had with Ryan about that, Jason, I think he wanted us there more as community members. Because we've already done our due diligence on that project as far as criteria goes and restrictions. So I don't know, Miles, do you have any feeling about that?
That was my feeling too. I feel like if there is a question posed though, like, well, how did the planning commission feel about this and that, because it will be kind of a open format, then, you know, you can step in and put your planning commission member hat on. But that was my sense too, is you're just informed community members that
Right.
are hopefully there to help create a balanced conversation.
And I think the sentiment for some people who are raising issues about this is that it's just come out of nowhere. And it's so rushed, and how is this happening so fast? And I think that you all could certainly speak to the fact that it isn't out of nowhere, and that many meetings and much time were dedicated to this project, which are of course public meetings, even if the public isn't doing their due diligence to keep up with that. Certainly there's videos and minutes and all
Public
these
hearings
things, but I
and
think
newspapers.
that the idea that this was a rash decision that made at the last minute without any thought is not valid, and you all would understand that probably better than probably certainly better than the Board of Trustees. I'm sure you did much more behind the scenes than they did.
So for submitting of questions, I mean, who are we submitting questions to? Is it to the developer, MEDC? Are the Board of Trustees also people that we could submit questions to?
I would imagine Ryan would be the person, and then he
Ryan's-
would maybe send it out to whom he feels would be the best posed
Because he's
to
kind of
answer that.
facilitating
Brian
things.
told me he wanted to be the point man, so if you have something of
I
concern,
mean,
I would
the
address it to him.
biggest concern I have is a Board of Trustee member, not leveraging any evidence to making statements about PFAS on social media and how that represents the township.
Some of us don't look
I'd
at
like to
social
know
media.
what evidence that board member has, and provide some logic behind the statements that she's making on social media.
I think that's a very valid concern, because I share your concern, because they assured me that they do not use PFAS in their operation, because it's restricted in Europe. They can't do it, and they told us they intend to follow the same rules and regulations that European standards are.
I think he did say that they're gonna have stuff, but SCUMA, I mean, I don't wanna get into this discussion, so I was just gonna say, I'm gonna refer most of my, if anybody turns to me, I'll probably refer to you, just to let you know, Miles.
Yeah, if you
because
ask me a PFAS question, it sounds like I'm gonna probably direct you to
But-
SCUMA or Kate.
I would like to ask, just, cause if I remember right, there's no drains in them floors.
That's
When
correct.
That is correct.
When we, agreed for this facility to be there, that we tried to, make so that no contaminants could even go into the ground, that it goes
Right.
to SCUMA. So
Correct.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure I was on track, that I remembered correctly. And, cause I did tell somebody that today when they were questioning me, and I said, I don't know how I mean, I voted no against it, if you guys remember it, but it wasn't because of that. I just felt like it didn't fit into the kind of surrounding. But long story short, that main topic was discussed, and the floor drains were discussed.
And it was discussed at the board level too. I think, go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say, they also think that they're gonna have pre-treatment
Pre-treatment,
on site
yes.
before it goes to
Correct,
school.
correct. That is correct.
But I will
Excuse me.
admit that at the podium, he didn't say they wouldn't be using that. He said, depends on what basically, it depends what the manufacturers, what their customers want.
Well, that's gonna be a consideration, but they also did commit that they would not vary from the European standards for
Right.
pollution. And SCUMA is going to put in a monitoring, actually a manhole for monitoring.
Yeah,
And they said if there were any PFAS chemicals in the effluent, they were prepared to deal with them. So I think that personally Roundup is a bigger issue than PFAS chemicals.
So I think the supervisor's whole point is to this conversation you guys are having exactly. An informed conversation to not only have an informed conversation, but maybe bring out other elements, cause everyone knows what Facebook is. And I mean, we know what it's not, and so it's just good to have a formal discussion about it, and I think that will be positive.
For the 5 people that will show up.
Sure, but then
That
you
were already
can
at all the
always,
other meetings?
but then you can always say, you know, if anything else, you can say, hey, you know, people said that this came out of nowhere, we had further discussions of our own volition, and you didn't come.
Right, but we've been talking about this for well over a year, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Mark?
where are you seeing her comments on Facebook? I'm not-
On the community
You don't
page.
want to even go.
Okay,
No, you just dig around into the Bath Community News, site, once you get past all the air duct cleaning ads. Then you'll find, hodgepodge of comments.
No.
Jason, do you have anything else?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Ray?
just one question, I saw they started moving some dirt out here,
That's a good question.
what's happening there?
Yeah, what's going on with that, and that's another reason I think these open forums will be good, because I bet a lot of people are like, there's where that factory's going, right on the corner. And, and that's not the case, so what's going on with that there is, there's a low spot in Webster Road there, and it's always kind of been a nightmare for sight angles and sight distance. I know deer are just massacred there at that low spot every year. What we're attempting to do is work with the road commission and Mr. Kessler, cause he's got a lot of dirt and he's got a hilly site. He needs somewhere to put some of that dirt, and we've got a low spot that needs some dirt. And we're ripping up a road soon, so it was kinda like 2 + 2 = 4, let's put the dirt in the low and build a road on top of it. Daryl Kessler gets a spot to put some dirt, we get a more leveled out road with better sight distances at a very reduced cost. I think the township's overall cost here is $10,000. If we were to go in on that project on our own with the road commission, I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's kind of a win-win, so that's what's going on, basically.
So
The question I've had though is, how are they gonna raise Webster Road up to where it needs to be, without closing Webster Road?
They are probably going to close Webster Road.
That's what I was thinking.
When I asked Karen, she said she thought they would keep one lane open
I don't think that.
at the board
I
of
don't think
trustees
that's
meeting
gonna be
last week.
practical.
Yeah, I heard
No?
Karen say
Okay.
that, and I don't wanna
I
freak
mean-
everyone out and put out false information, but that, I don't think that.
Okay,
I don't think
I don't
that's
think
gonna
so
be
either.
practical.
We'll put out more information as.
Yeah.
we
maybe
get
just
closer.
for emergency vehicles only.
They'd have to build a temporary road around.
They will always have access for emergency vehicles, and I think maybe that's where that was coming from.
So the township allocated 10,000 to that, cause I saw the county put 80,000 to that
That's
project.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's going on both sides of the road, that dirt?
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's even, because of the wet area on the other side, there's even some Eagle permits that were secured. There was an agreement that was entered between, the road commission and Mr. Kessler, and then the road commission and Eagle.
Yeah.
And I think it's gonna make it better for the sidewalks too.
Oh, yeah, well,
It reduces our cost for some of the sidewalk work we're doing there big time. Now we just gotta get Somerset to play ball. They're being very corporate about it.
What was the discussion about the DDA, language about requirements of sidewalks? That was a meeting, you brought that up at a meeting that I was not at, Kate, I don't think you were at that meeting.
I think we're, the new sidewalk ordinance is coming online soon. There is a fear that some of the sidewalks are really subpar in the DDA area, and that as the new sidewalk ordinance comes online, I think there is the fear that we're gonna be like, homeowner responsibility, yours is totally trash, like, it's gonna cost $90,000 on you to repair, you got 5 years, get to it. I wanna, dispel that fear of like, we're using township funds, state funds, safe routes to school funds to get near 99.98% of the sidewalks up to modern standards. It won't, not all of it will be up to modern ADA standards, but it will meet our township standards.
Just to clarify, I think it was that ordinance language that never got uploaded into
Oh.
Unicode.
So you brought up, yep, I did see that, so, you brought back some language that I, at the time, was like, oh, like, this must have been a mistake, you know, that language was submitted to Municode, and then when I first got hired, there was an ordinance that Nick had already been, in the process of reviewing with the planning commission. It was actually titled very, very, very refined language is how he had it in the computer, cause I think it'd been here a couple of times. I took that to you guys, it got passed, and in the process of that getting passed, probably unintentionally, it wiped out, it was G that you brought. G was wiped out along with A through G, and that section was removed. Now, that language is good language, I went back in history and saw this, like, this section, let's just say it was like 20.04, and it was like A through G, and G was added to that. And then 20.04 was changed to just one single paragraph. So it's totally amended, so that language was inserted and then taken back out.
I'd have to think about that, but I don't think that that is a legitimate process. I mean, cause that was planning commission and board approved language.
And then the planning commission and board approved new language, that wiped that language out.
Without knowledge of the existence of that language, and that's the part that I'm a little bit concerned about. And so it's important language for us to hold on to,
And
because
that language can get reintroduced and be brought back at any time, but through that process, it was wiped out.
I don't know, take a look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I won't have any objections to that, we could get that at the next meeting if you want, and get it back in there. And it's probably just is one of those things with staff changeover and trying to roll in new updates. It was a part of that, site plan review language, where, like, the whole site plan review section was changed. So just prior to that, you guys changed one byline, and then like a month later, we changed the whole section, the whole article was changed.
But, I mean, those elements, I mean, we can talk about it.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about offline too, and just see what you guys wanna do. I mean, I'm perfectly willing to rectify any mistake that was made in error.
Okay.
Anybody, anything else? No,
Move to adjourn?
move to adjourn? Is there a second? Those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Anyone opposed?
Jason, this board.
None opposed. Thank you, gentlemen. And Kate?